And James, Monday through Friday, 8 to 11
Stand by.
Eastern.
And away we go on a Wednesday. Happiness is a choice. Thank you for choosing us, along with James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. How are you, sir?
Fantastic. Excited to see Will Connerly in the house, producing on the audio side, but there's only one pod of coffee left in the building.
Uh-oh.
So Will and I are going to arm wrestle for it during the next break.
Is that why you threw a hissy fit over there a few minutes ago?
A lot of foot stomping. I was throwing things.
It was kind of awkward. I was like, I don't know what's going on
so
here.
Mad about? Yeah, me and Will, there's only one left. One left.
My money's on Will. He's a giant compared to you.
We got a little David versus Goliath
He could literally eat you.
sitch happening.
He could literally pick you up with his bare hands and stick you into his mouth.
It's all about leverage. It's all about leverage, arm length. It's all the measurables. You know
See,
that.
you're dialed in right now. We are closing in a day away from the NFL. I was about to say 24 hours, but 24 hours from now, we'll still be talking about how close we are to the draft.
We'll be super close.
Way closer than we are right now.
Really exciting.
Like, what are we, 32 hours away, 33 hours? We're certainly like 40 hours away from the draft.
I think
the first
that math
round finish
checks
date.
out. I think it's closer to 36.
Yeah.
But we're there. We're close.
But I like that you've really gotten into your, low man wins. This is good. You put your scouting hat on. This is fantastic.
Yeah, the only thing, Will has unparalleled energy. I know Will's in the building because I walk in and I can just see in my peripheral his foot tapping. Will's a foot tapper, always foot tapping. So Will's just a high energy guy, and I strive in my life to match that energy, or even half of that energy.
Yeah. Will Connerly in today for T-Chains, Tamer Turner, who's out with a sore throat. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Want to get to the latest on spring meetings when it comes to college football and the college football playoff, and expansion discussions are here yet again. So we debate 16 or 24 or 12 or 4, I guess. We'll get to that in a moment. But the draft is in Pittsburgh, and learning now that Pittsburgh is preemptively moving their students in the city to online learning, no school during the draft, due to just the amount of people in the downtown area, how much it disrupts local traffic, public infrastructure. Sort of an amazing thing that an NFL draft, which is sort of a non-event to be at, it's literally grown men walking across the stage, shaking another grown man's hand, in some cases hugging that grown man.
500 to 700,000 people are expected to flock to Pittsburgh.
Think about that number. If you'd like to know how popular the NFL is, they're going to have close to 1 million people. And this is not unique. It's a similar number every year where the traveling roadshow of the NFL draft goes. But people, they had this in Vegas. They had 1 million people outside in the desert in April in Vegas. And to me, it seems like a music festival without the music.
Mm-hmm.
What's the allure of it? And you get you go to the draft? No. Why would I want to wait outside for hours on end to see a grown man walk across the stage and shake another grown man's hand?
Yeah. And there's not a good seat in the house.
No.
You literally cannot see the person that's getting drafted. You're watching most of it on a video board, but it's just a massive NFL party. Kind of reminds me of the Final Four, like a really cool idea until you're actually there and you realize you can't see hardly anything.
Well, I think that's it. I don't even think being there is about being there. It's more about being a part of the party.
Totally. And 500 to 700,000 people. And if you know Morgantown, West Virginia, you know Pittsburgh because you fly into Pittsburgh and then you drive about an hour and 15 minutes south into Morgantown. The NFL draft will bring about 12 Morgantowns to Pittsburgh. 12 times the population of Morgantown will flock to Pittsburgh, which to begin with isn't as big of a city as maybe you think. There's a lot of history and pedigree. It is a really cool city. I never had really any interest in visiting that part of the country. But doing so many games in Morgantown, I spent like a Sunday in Pittsburgh just kind of exploring. And you've got all the stadiums right there on the water, a really cool, really clean downtown, and then just a couple of blocks away, a ton of awesome, really old, for lack of a better term, like medieval architecture. Then you've got Pitt and Duquesne just around the corner. It is a really neat city, but 500 to 700,000 people flocking into downtown is going to be total chaos. It's going to be awesome. Well, but it's not that big.
It's the reason why Pittsburgh Public Schools has opted to go remote learning today through Friday this week, which is just insane to think about.
Dude, they shut down schools for 19,000 kids. 19,000 kids.
Because of the NFL draft.
Not a snow day. Not COVID.
Not even Pittsburgh winning a championship at anything.
Stanley Cup. No thanks.
Nope.
NFL draft. We're staying home. Don't go outside.
It's incredible. I mean, to think about the growth of the NFL draft, and you talk to like a John McClain who's written for the Houston Chronicle. I know he doesn't anymore, but wrote for the Houston Chronicle for many, many years. Has covered the NFL for, I mean, my goodness, is longer than I've been alive, longer than you and I have been alive. And you hear stories about from some of these guys who've covered the NFL as long as they have. Like there's a writer for the Pittsburgh Gazette, same thing. You think like it used to be like phones were called in to put your pick in. Then then they moved it to New York. Like so, at first it was like people at different locations. They moved it to New York. I mean, it's just insane to think about now. Like now that 700,000 people are going to be there to watch this.
Yeah, and I always probably my favorite part of the draft is just the anticipation, right? That's number one. But then number two, I love the war room cams that they always put together, and you can see teams get really dejected when the guy that they want gets drafted too high or a guy falls to them and they're celebrating like they've just won the Super Bowl. It's always just this wide range of emotions. And then just, we have our guys that we like and don't like, and so you kind of make fun of one franchise for taking a guy where they do, right. And then you think, oh, this is a real sleeper pick. And it doesn't necessarily translate, but it's an awesome event. And Pittsburgh, so they closed school for all of these students essentially because they couldn't get to school. A lot of them take like public transportation, and all these routes have been canceled because of all the road closures in the downtown area or in the surrounding area from where the draft is going to be held. So best option, let's do it online. If you can't get to school, you can't get to school.
One of the more popular features of the NFL draft over the years has been John Gruden's quarterback camp. It maybe had a little bit more juice before he came back as an NFL coach because that was an unmitigated disaster with the Raiders. And, even regardless of the email stuff, like that's one side of it. But then there's also like the Ceylon Farrell pick in a top 4 draft. Just some really bad picks and not great coaching. But despite that, John Gruden's still fun to listen to when it comes to the media side. He's with Barstool Sports now. He still does his quarterback camp. And this year is a little bit soft with this not being a great quarterback draft. But Sawyer Robertson was featured on that this week, and this is the one clip of Sawyer's that's gone viral.
And, Baylor's a good academic school. I was going to these classes, and I had all these assignments where it was like, hey, get your LinkedIn updated so you can get this internship. You can check my LinkedIn right now. It's still not updated. I knew football was going to work out for me. I didn't know how or when it would happen, but when I got my opportunity, I knew I was going to make the most of it.
Don't ever change.
Yeah.
Just remember, there's a lot of dumbass coaches.
What does that have to do with updating his LinkedIn profile?
And not doing an assignment at class at Baylor.
It's the most amazing quote, just one-liner from John Gruden, who is obsessed with football. I remember I listened to a podcast he was on, and he is insane. Like, he wakes up every day and it's football. He sleeps like 5 hours a night. And so even post-coaching, he still breaks down film and all these different players and teams as if he's coaching, and he really has no skin in the game. It's the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah, no, you're right. He just stays ready.
Yeah.
The funny part about the LinkedIn piece is the Fernando Mendoza side, which, famously he's like got a LinkedIn profile. He was posting on it after winning the national championship and posted on it that he was going to the NFL draft. So on the one hand, you have the number one pick who's leaned into a life and career after football with LinkedIn. On the other hand, you've got Sawyer Robertson who's like, yeah, Baylor's a good school. I don't really do any of the class assignments because I knew that I'd be a football player.
Right. And I don't like the idea that Sawyer Robertson wasn't taking class seriously and academics seriously. I think that's a very different thing from posting on LinkedIn, which LinkedIn is fire, is what the kids say now. LinkedIn is how all these people are getting jobs. But it's also kind of enlightening just to the degree that Sawyer Robertson takes football seriously, right? That's a guy who's not just playing football because he's 6'5", 240 pounds, and has a cannon for an arm. That's a kid that's obsessed with football and wants to get better, which is why I think he could be a very serviceable backup in the Big 12 or in the NFL right away, and maybe like eventually work his way into a starting job.
Yeah, that's James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. More to come on the draft as we continue our from Saturdays to Sundays series, the final day where we are profiling teams, Texas Tech and BYU. Of course, the draft is tomorrow, and we'll talk safeties as well. So as we round out our from Saturdays to Sundays discussion, plus Corey Coleman, the former Baylor wide receiver, former first-round pick, now a TCU assistant wide receivers coach, will join us coming up in about 40 minutes from now. We're also power ranking post-spring top 5 football teams in the Big 12 post-spring. That's coming up. But we've got spring meetings going on in Dallas, actually just a few miles from where we are currently at the Ritz-Carlton in Las Colinas, with the 10 athletic directors across, or rather the 10 conference commissioners across the country, and Pete Bavacqua, the athletic director at Notre Dame, because, of course, they get their own seat at the table because they were good 100 years ago. And now the talk, James, centers on 24 teams. Last year the big talk was that the SEC wanted 16, the Big Ten wanted 24, and those talks reached an impasse. Now, that was at a point in time in which they needed, to have some uniformity in terms of the voting. Now the voting comes down squarely to the Big Ten of the SEC, so they get to make the decision here. And it feels like there's a lot more momentum for a 24-team playoff, James. And that's not just based on what we're hearing. Greg Byrne, the athletic director from Alabama, mentioned recently that, maybe the SEC championship game has run its course. And now the talk about moving the season up, moving week 0 up, let's just call it moving the season up.
Right.
Another week, which helps you get out by the end of Thanksgiving. So it's just really interesting now to hear all of the dialogue, which last year it felt like 24 teams just seemed outrageous. And now a lot of the coaches across the SEC are trumpeting the idea of a 24-team playoff, which is in line with what the Big Ten wants.
Well, the fact that we're still kind of stuck at 12 when you see the NCAA men's basketball tournament expanding to 76, like expansion is happening. And I think the longer that we sit at 12, the more likely it is that there's a larger jump. I don't think we'll go 12 to 14 to 16 to 18. Like, I think it's the longer we sit at 12, the more likely it is that it doubles. And who has the power here, right? Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, who's not at these meetings, by the way. You've got this White House committee, which there are guys that are doubling part of the White House committee and part of the college football playoff subcommittee that's meeting over here just across the street. And it sounds like now we're in a position where the Big Ten has convinced everybody else that, hey, this 24-team playoff can benefit everybody. Personally, I love it. I love that the Big 12 would have at least four teams in, because I want to see the Big 12 have a chance to prove it on the field. And right now, those odds are the deck is very much stacked against the Big 12 to do that, for more teams to pull off upsets when you've only got one team going in back-to-back years.
Right. One of the things we've talked about is the Big 12 basically gets one point, one data point to be judged on.
Exactly.
And that's just an inadequate description and characterization of the conference as a whole.
Like, the entire conference is judged off of Texas Tech not scoring a point against Oregon.
Yeah.
Well, what if BYU had upset Miami?
Right.
What if Arizona had beaten USC?
Right.
It totally moves that needle in terms of parity among the power conferences. But right now, it sounds like everybody's on board. All the other commissioners, Notre Dame's cool with it. Everybody's on board. The American is all over this. They want this to happen more than anybody else. Everybody except Greg Sankey, SEC, and ESPN.
Well, and that's
hold all the cards.
And that is where the rubber meets the road here. Chris Lowe from On3 got some really good quotes from athletic directors, coaches involved in this. And, one was, quote, SEC folks would go to 24 now. Greg has a mixed room he has to manage, end quote. And that's from an athletic director, a Big Ten athletic director, which is interesting because you're saying, well, if the coaches and the teams in the SEC all agree that 24 is fine, who's he managing in the mixed room? And to your point, it's the ESPN. I mean, those are the puppet masters here. Fox, with the Big Ten, wants a 2014 playoff. Why? Because they want to get in on the playoff. ESPN now holds the exclusive rights to the playoff, and they've obviously sold off pieces of it to other networks, but not to Fox. Right? So this is really a battle between Fox and ESPN. And ESPN wants to continue to control the playoff. Fox wants some skin in the game when it comes to that. In a 2014 playoff, they will most likely be able to get in on that. That's the whole boat here. It's the reason Sankey's not coming to this meeting. It's the reason that he's, in some ways, going against the member institutions and what they want. It's really interesting, but not as much, I guess, when you think about it.
Well, no, it is fascinating because I think we're starting to see momentum towards a 2014 playoff and Fox having part of that playoff bracket. And with Greg Sankey, with his room divided now, I don't know that 9 months or a year ago it was divided at all. I think all of the SEC coaches were against this. But then now you have SEC teams being left out of the college football playoff. And I do think the SEC going, 1-8 in this most recent college football playoff does play into, like, Sark at Texas is saying, hey, we went 1-8, maybe we should have been in the playoff. Or somebody else that just missed that cut line. The SEC had, 5 teams in the playoff? They thought they had, 7 or 8 that could have been in the playoff. So I think it's those other 3 that are saying, hey, if we have a 24-team playoff, we can get in. Maybe we can be the team that wins games in the college football playoff for the SEC. So that's why I think the momentum is building towards some pushback against Sankey and ESPN, because all of these coaches think they're good enough to be in the playoff.
Well, and remember, too, the scheduling matters here as well, because the SEC has gone to 9 conference games, and they must play at least one non-conference power opponent. So they look at it and say, I've got 10 tough games. I need more teams in, so there's a little bit more of a grace period for us in terms of trying to get into the playoff. And that's, in many ways, where all these coaches' heads are. In fact, some of the dialogue from the SEC is, well, we play as many conference games as the Big Ten does, but they don't have to play a non-conference power opponent. So we've got a tougher schedule here, despite the SEC's most recent playoff record and the Big Ten's success here. It's a really interesting dynamic. The other thing was Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner, says, quote, we're leaving teams out of the college football playoff that could win the national championship, end quote. Yeah, I mean, you could pretty much make that case for 48 teams or 60 teams.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. But
and could, a 3-loss Michigan team from last year that would have been in the field last year win a national championship? I mean, it seems kind of awkward to just make the criteria for how many teams are being left out that could win the national championship. In a hypothetical world, anybody could win the national championship.
Totally. There's 300 college basketball programs that think they could win the national championship. But the guys that have the power and the guys that do believe they can win a national championship are the guys that are at Texas and Michigan. And Vanderbilt was one of the first teams left out. Like, you look at USC would have been in the field. There are a lot of high-level programs. BYU from the Big 12, Arizona, Houston would have had a chance in the college football playoff. Utah would have had a chance. The Big 12 would have had 5 of the 24. Those coaches believe that they can win a national championship. And a 9-3 Texas doesn't get into a 12-team field, but a 9-3 Texas gets into a 24-team field, as does several Big 12 schools.
Corey Coleman on the way. Coming up next, though, we power rank top 5 football teams the Big 12 post-spring. And, well, it's Jack Nicholson's 88th birthday, so stay tuned for our random power rankings today. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
And here, and he's home again! Changing up the look. The result is the same for David Bailey.
56% on the year on conversions. Jackson's in trouble and down. David Bailey, he is a sack machine.
More on 3rd and 8. Pressure, and they get to him. He is sacked by the best in the biz,
now on the season.
On this possession, what a huge smack in the backfield again. It's David Bailey walloping Jamarian Burnett.
Work on an empty here, 3rd down and 9. Kansas State, oh goodness, look out. David Bailey, the sack leader in the nation, gets home again.
Cam Pickett is much healthier now and running better. You see it there.
Oh, good night. David Bailey in a heartbeat. He graduated from Stanford in under 4 years, and he runs like this.
Big 12 today, Big 12 radio, former Baylor wide receiver Corey Coleman, now a TCU assistant wide receivers coach, joining us in 15 minutes. It is Wednesday, though, James. James Westling, Ari Tepkin. Big 12 today presented by Modelo. And on Wednesdays, we put our pants on one leg at a time, except that on Wednesdays, once our pants are on, we power rank. Because it's a power ranking world, and it's not good enough to just have things. You have to power rank them accordingly. And so that's why we power rank on Wednesdays. So we first power rank something Big 12, then we power rank something random. So without further ado, let's power rank the top 5 teams of the Big 12 post-spring football.
Dude, I had no idea that Corey Coleman was coaching. He's also the pride of J.J. Pierce High School, just a stone's throw from us. So really excited for that. All right, I had to have like a sleeper pick in my top 5 post-spring Big 12 football teams. I thought about Oklahoma State, but what's their defense going to look like? At number 5, I'm going with the Kansas State Wildcats. Bias aside, K-State had more one-score losses than anybody else in the conference, still went 6-6, and Colin Klein in year 1 has inherited a great group of core players. Like they've got 4 of their top 6 offensive linemen back. They've got Avery Johnson back at quarterback. They have Joe Jackson back at running back, who set a single-game program record when he rushed for 300 yards against Utah late in the season. And then I love what they did in the portal defensively. They add the Big 12 reigning newcomer of the year in Wendell Gregory to kind of highlight that side of the ball. So I've got K-State at number 5.
Yeah, it's a busy top 5 here and really tough to crack this list. For 5 for me is Utah. And obviously, you know, the Utes have a lot of change. New offensive coordinator. A lot of players are gone. New head coach. But I'm still buying what they're selling. I think Devin Dampier and Kevin McGivern's offense will work. It's similar enough, and I think we'll definitely prioritize Dampier's strengths. You know, the biggest uncertainty would be along the offensive line, where they're losing 2 first-round picks in Lomu and Fano. But I still think, based on their history, that this is a team that's going to be competing towards the top of the Big 12. And a guy to watch for would be Braden Pagan, the tight end who comes with McGivern from Utah State. And I think a guy that can step into an immediate role and become a difference maker as a receiving option at tight end for Devin Dampier.
At number 4. This is where I've got Arizona State. They went 8-5 last year off of that 11-win campaign from 2 seasons ago, and for them to go 8-5 with Sam Leavitt out most of the year is an absolute miracle. They were the only team to beat Texas Tech in the regular season. I love what Kenny Dillingham has leaned into, said relationships aren't built through roses and candy canes, they're built through conflict. That's how he addressed all the spring practice fights that have been breaking out. They have 2 really veteran quarterbacks that they brought in Cutter Boley and Mikey Keene. I think both are capable of winning football games. I love what they did at receiver. I've got Arizona State at number 4.
Yeah, number 4 for me, this is going to be interesting because we've got what appears to be a different grouping of teams here in the top 5. Arizona's number 4 for me. I mean, look, tough year 1 for Brent Brennan. He really built something year 2, and for my money, in terms of returning quarterbacks, Noah Fafita is one of the best in college football with experience, you know, with having the same system now in place for 2 straight years, and Seth Dagey, you know, really smart, good offensive coordinator. Yeah, I think this is a team that could absolutely push for a Big 12 title. The biggest thing is their closing schedule. We've talked about this too. Texas Tech, TCU, and Utah, and K-State, and then Arizona State to close. At Texas Tech, TCU, Utah, at K-State, and then Arizona State to close. So that's a tough deal, but I just think with Fafita, he'll be in the Heisman race this year. That gives them a fighting chance, which is why I have them at 4. Number 3.
Will is so ready for it. All right, number 3 for me is going to be Houston. I think Houston...
Too low.
They will contend for a Big 12 championship. 10 wins in year 2 under Willie Fritz, Connor Wegman back, number 1 player in the country, and Keyshawn Henderson. Also, their portal class, Sports Illustrated has them at number 7, rocketing past programs like Texas, Florida, BYU, Miami, Ole Miss, Notre Dame. They had a very underrated portal class pairing with a lot of returning talent. I don't care what their schedule looks like. This team is legit under Willie Fritz.
Number 3 for me is BYU. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of teams at the top here. And look, I mean, I think this defense is going to be elite, even with the loss of some of the players they've lost. Jack Kelly, of course, their defensive coordinator. But I think Kelly Papinga steps in and will be immediately similar. They won't take much of a step back, I don't think, on defense at all, based on Kelly Papinga taking over as the defensive coordinator. I mean, Glasgow is back. Satuala is back. Keanu Tanavasa is back. So, again, from a personnel standpoint, they're going to be fine. And then Bear Bachmeier, having that full year under his belt. He had a spring now on campus, which he didn't have last year. I think JoJo Phillips emerges at the wide receiver position. I think any of these three teams we're going to highlight here could win the Big 12. But I've got BYU third on this list right now.
Yeah, if I was taking one of these teams that we have in the top three versus the field to play in Arlington in the Big 12 championship, I'd take one of these top three to win the Big 12 title. I've got BYU at number 2. Bear Bachmeier had his best game of the season in the bowl game against Georgia Tech. Almost 400 yards passing, multiple touchdowns. I expect major growth in just his football IQ and how much better he got as the season developed in year 2. And then LJ Martin, one of the premier running backs in the country, returns. You brought up all the guys on defense. I think they have one of the most underrated play callers in all of college football. Really dynamic, explosive offense that doesn't get the credit it deserves. And then an outstanding portal class. Only brought in like a dozen dudes, but top 10 in the country. They're all proven 4-star, 5-star guys out of high school. I love what BYU's done. I've got them at 2.
This is my number 2. My number 2 is Houston, and thank you, Will. Number 2 for me is Houston. Look, I think 12 returning starters. This is the most complete team in terms of returning personnel that we have in the Big 12. I mean, you think about the quarterback with a dynamite backup behind him in terms of the true freshman Keyshawn Henderson, the number 1 recruit in the nation. Plus, you bring your top receiver back, and Amari Thomas is one of the best in the conference. Led the conference, or second in the conference in receiving yards at 966. So I just think, like, who they bring back, who they added, the running back position. To me, there's too much talent here with a really good coach. They're right on schedule here, year 3 for Willie Fritz. Give me Houston at number 2.
Number 1. There it is. Number 1 for me is obviously Texas Tech. Whether it's Poly Market or Kalshi or whatever your random betting service of choice is, Texas Tech has the number 1 odds in all of college football to run the table in the regular season and be undefeated. With Brendan Sorsby coming in at quarterback, Will Hammond recovering from his late season injury. They were top 3 this past year in scoring defense and yards allowed and rushing defense. I know they lose a ton of guys to the NFL, but they have completely reloaded. Adding Austin Romaine in the portal at linebacker is like Jacob Rodriguez 2.0. Really, really solid. And I love the wide receiver, running back, offensive line depth. Maybe not top-end talent compared to last year, but the depth is even better. I think the offense, which led the country in explosive plays last year, takes another step forward this year.
Yeah. Texas Tech for me also number 1. No reason not to have them there. So much talent, even with the players they lost. And there's many players that could be drafted. They had 8 go to the combine. Despite that, the talent that they're bringing back and in some ways upgraded puts them at number 1 on my list too. All right, it's time for our random power ranking now before we get to Corey Coleman. Today is Jack Nicholson's 88th birthday, one of the legendary actors of our time. And, what's amazing is he has not acted. He is not technically retired, but he hasn't acted since 2010. And I sent you a trailer for the last movie that he was in, which should have been a banger. Instead, it was a complete flop, but like a great cast. Did you watch the trailer?
I watched about 40 seconds.
I randomly sent you the trailer for this movie, being like, who's heard of this movie?
I had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
I was waiting for the punchline. I got 40 seconds in. I meant to ask you about it when we got in here this morning.
Last movie he did, How Do You Know? 2010, James L. Brooks, who's done some of the best, TV shows and movies ever, did The Simpsons, Taxi, great movies. Reese Witherspoon, Owen Wilson, Paul Rudd, and Jack Nicholson, total flop. Made just $50 million on a $120 million budget. I digress. Top 5 Jack Nicholson movies on his 88th birthday.
Number 5. All right, number 5 for me is Batman from 1989. So Nicholson was kind of a diva in terms of the deal that he put together. So he wanted to be not only the Joker character, but he wanted to get a portion of the film's earnings, including merchandise, and then he wanted to have his own shooting schedule. He told them when he would be on set. But that deal, because he had a percentage of the earnings, made him the most lucrative actor payday in Hollywood history. He got $6 million to just play the part, but then he also got a percentage of all the profits, including the merchandise tied to the Joker character.
Yeah, I also have Batman number 5. It's when you think about the range of Nicholson, and he's certainly been in some movies that are similar, this shows a total amount of range. I actually thought, like, Heath Ledger's Joker was great. I still think that Jack Nicholson stands up. Like, totally different, but a very unique and amazing look at the Joker. Jack Nicholson in the Batman, number 5 for me.
Number 4.
Yeah, he played so many roles, and he was so versatile. I tried to kind of go all over the board. Number 4 for me, 2003, Anger Management with Adam Sandler. This film was very underrated. It was number 1 at the box office, earned $42.2 million, surpassing Batman to be the highest opening weekend for both a Nicholson and an Adam Sandler film back in 2003. Made $195 million worldwide on a $75 million budget.
Number 4 for me is The Departed, and for my money, this is, 4 seems crazy low, but that's just the list that Jack Nicholson has. This is an ensemble cast, and again, given that he wasn't super active in the 2000s, this probably was his last best great movie, and he is amazing in this as the mob boss working undercover. If you haven't seen, spoiler alert, where have you been for the last couple of decades? Working with Matt Damon, who's playing both sides. Iconic role, The Departed, Jack Nicholson. I'm trying to touch every era, and this certainly hits on that.
Number 3.
All right, number 3 for me is A Few Good Men, 1992. That infamous line, "You can't handle the truth," totally off script. That whole scene was mostly ad-libbed. Also, Jack Nicholson was paid $5 million for that film for 10 days of shooting. He made $500,000 a day. He was only there 10 days, raked in $5 million, A Few Good Men in 1992.
I also have A Few Good Men, number 3, which also seems criminally low. He is so good in this movie as Colonel Nathan Jessup. Sometimes just to get fired up, I'll watch his monologue at the end. "You need me on that wall." The "you can't handle the truth" wasn't even the best line in that entire sequence.
Number 2.
All right, number 2 for me, As Good as It Gets, 1997. This film grossed $314 million on a $50 million budget. And it's one of those late-night movies that, even though this is 1997, but today, feel like it's on TNT or TBS every other Friday. It is a classic, and it's definitely like the lead comedy role that we saw from Nicholson. I've got that at number 2.
Yeah, that one barely missed my list. It would have been 6 on my list. Number 2 is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I think the top 2 are the most iconic roles that, for me, that Nicholson's had, including, of course, this one, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He's so good in this movie. That's my number 2.
Number 1.
Number 1 for me, I think you had this at number 3, The Departed.
Yep.
From 2006.
4, actually.
Number 4, okay. Well, the character that he played was based off of a real-life crime boss who he studied and studied and studied. And so 90% of his lines were completely improvised. Just based off of he had leaned into that role. The improv is all over the screen in this movie, and Rotten Tomatoes named it the number 1 gangster drama of all time. Won 4 Oscars. That's my number 1.
Number 1 is the Stephen King book, of course, directed by Stanley Kubrick, The Shining. Here's Johnny! He's scary, crazy scary in that movie. Even scarier than he is as the mob boss in The Departed. The Shining is such a good movie. It's iconic. The Shining, number 1 for me. And you think about The Shining, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and A Few Good Men. Those are 3 iconic films of all time.
But is he scarier than he is sitting courtside at Lakers games?
That's James Westling. I'm Ari Temkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. Former Baylor wide receiver Corey Coleman talks draft with us next. It's Big 12 Today.
On 3rd and 12, backside heat, fumbled it, it came out. Ball's on the ground. Cougars recover at the 5. Big hit by Jack Kelly. 3rd and 16. Jordan over the middle again. It's caught by Alvarez, but he's going to be taken down at the 39. It's to the holder. Here's the kick. It's blocked. And BYU trying to run it back here. Jack Kelly, who just made the defensive play, allowing defense.
Pressure coming from Kelly. Dampier hit, and down he goes. Jack Kelly may have sealed it for BYU.
Inside pressure on Hauser. and he's dropped Jack Kelly. It was just a matter of time.
This season getting worked on here. Backside pressure. Hauser feels it. Will not get away. And that is number 2 for Jack Kelly.
On the draw, dangerously close to being a safety. Micah Ford hit by who else? The ubiquitous, ever-present Jack Kelly. Salter flushed out, being spotted, dragged down at the 38-yard line by Jack Kelly.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, and we are so pleased to be joined right now by one of the best players in the history of the Big 12 Conference, Corey Coleman, the former Baylor wide receiver, and now the TCU assistant wide receivers coach. We're going to have to get into that, but we were just talking with you during the break because both James and I, this is quite a thrill. We're talking with maybe the greatest football player ever from the high school that our kids will eventually go to, and where my wife went, which is J.J. Pierce High School. We both live in the district, and I was shocked. I knew you were from Dallas. As many good Dallas area high schools for football as there are, Pierce is not one of them. So the Pierce grad, of course, went to Baylor, first round pick in the NFL. But yeah, we were just talking about Pierce through the break, and I mean, it's sort of amazing that you were as recruited as highly as you were, given maybe the lack of talent that Pierce had at that time and continues to have.
So Corey, take us through, and I drive by J.J. Pierce like 7 times a day. We were just talking during the break. Take us through the recruiting process. Like, what went down in terms of you ultimately selecting Baylor and having just a ridiculous career. We talked with Bryce Petty. He was on our show last week. You guys had so many good teams. So take us back and give us a little trip down memory lane in your journey.
Yeah, for sure. The ultimate goal was, when I was 5 years old, to make it to the NFL. So I got to J.J. Pierce. I know it's going to be kind of rough, getting recruited out of that school, because I look at, the history of the school and football players and athletes. It's phenomenal with academics and things like that. It's an awesome school, right, to send your kids to. But on the football scale of things, it's kind of rough. So I remember, as a freshman, I was supposed to get moved up to varsity. I got moved up to varsity as 7-on-7 as a corner, and, I played a little, and I'm like, okay, I can do this thing. It gave me a lot of confidence. In my sophomore season, I go up and I start playing running back. I went to a camp. It was called the Old Coach Camp, I believe. I ran 4.2840. So, I jumped out running 4.28, and, the internet went crazy. He's like, oh, this kid from Pierce, he's super fast, and things like that. So, like, honestly, other schools, around the Metroplex start, like, hey, you want to come to my school? Hey, you want to come to our school? Trying to, recruit. And then I picked up my first offer from, I believe it was Oklahoma State at running back. I went to their camp, and I ran like 4.31, and they offered me right away. And then that's when all the other schools start jumping on, and they were offering me as an athlete. And, I had a real good connection with, the head coach, Coach Browse. I was living like in the bad part of Dallas, and some apartments. And all the other coaches was like, hey, you can meet me out at Chili's. You can meet me, at these restaurants. And I remember Coach Browse coming to the apartments. He pulled up, came to the apartments, came in,
Wow.
Ate a home cooked meal for my mom. I'm like, hey, if you do this, I know that you're going to go to bat for me. And that's what, made my decision, really choosing Baylor. And they were already, rolling. I knew guys like Kendall Wright who was there and things like that. Yeah, once I got to Baylor, because I was highly recruited, I was under investigation. They were like, why you choose Baylor out of all these schools? So, I stuck with them. I believed in the program, and it turned out well for me.
Yeah, no doubt about it. One of the most prolific receivers in the history of the program. 173 receptions, 3,000 receiving yards, 33 touchdowns. And like you said, following in the footsteps of Kendall Wright and Terrence Williams and many more NFL players, including yourself, who became a first-round pick. So take us through your draft experience. We are a day away from the first round. What did you think? What were your expectations? Did you go where you expected to go? Did you go higher, low? Like, give us a sense here of what you were going through, 24 hours before the draft.
It's a lot of, butterflies. This is a moment that you've been waiting for, probably 95, 99% of the kids, your whole life. It's the top of the pinnacle, right? So you can only imagine, all these things going to your head. And when you get invited to the draft in your head as a kid, okay, I'm going first round, right? But that doesn't really do it any, justice, because you still have to wait, right? I remember I was sitting in the green room, and I was the first receiver off the board. I was the 15th pick. When I got around pick 5, even though I know I thought I was going top 10, top 15 around like where I went. But when you hear the names come off the board, that feeling is insane, because you're like, when is my name going to get called? Right? So it's a blessing, you know. Honestly, he's one of the, you know, the best things that ever happened to a kid, you know.
Corey, take us back to that draft. As you noted, you were taken 15th overall, first round by the Browns. When did you know that they were selecting you? Is it truly in that like 10, 15-minute window between picks, or do you have an idea as it gets to 11 or 12 that you might be next? I would love to know what it's like being there and getting ready.
So this was kind of crazy. I'll give you a kind of crazy story. So I thought I was going, you know, like I said, top 10, top 15. I thought I was going to Houston. You know, the Browns, I visited the Browns, and I remember them telling me, hey, we have the number 2 pick. You know, we love you as a player. We think that you're the best receiver in this draft, but it'd be impossible for us to take you with the number 2 pick. So I'm like, okay, so that leaves, you know, Houston already told me, you know, at the time, like, we're drafting you, you know? And so I'm going through, you know, I'm in the green room. I see stuff get all shaken up. The Browns move back. They move back. They move back. And I'm like, okay, this is a window where they can take me, but they just told me that they wouldn't take me, you know? And so it changed everything. So I think Houston thought I was going to be on the board still. And the Browns moved back and they drafted me.
You know, it's funny. We talked earlier this week with Jason Morrow from Texas Tech, who, you know, another guy that kind of felt like if he had been drafted in a different spot, his career may have gone different. I mean, he basically told us that. Do you feel the same way about an organization that historically has not been great in the draft or, you know, in putting the right players in position?
I definitely think so, and I can kind of give you my. I don't want to dive too deep into it, but you got to think about the position I play, right? I feel like if I played corner, it would have been an easier transition on the team that's haven't drafted or haven't organization is not where it needs to be yet, right? In my opinion. So I feel like when you play receiver and you get drafted to organization that's, you know, still trying to figure some things out, it's kind of hard, right? Because you got to bank on the whole line being really great. You got to bank on the quarterback being really good. You got to bank on the play calling, right? It's a lot of variables for a receiver, you know, to go out there and play to his, you know, go out there and play the way he needs to play, you know. And with me too, injuries, you can't determine when you're going to get injured or, you know, that's part of the game, right? And sometimes people are unfortunately to get more injuries than others, you know. I feel like if you look at my first year, you know, I would have had a solid year if I didn't break my hand. Then I come back year 2, I break my hand in the same place again. So it's like, okay, those 2 seasons, you know, kind of get looked over because it's like, okay, he was hurt.
Yeah, great point.
How much did those hand injuries? I'm glad you brought that up, and you're very kind because the Browns went 1-15 your rookie year and had like 4 different quarterbacks starting games with no offensive line.
Probably like 12.
With the hand injury, like how much did you feel like that set you back more like physically? Or was it like now there's this perception from teams in the NFL that I've got this hand injury situation that maybe isn't as big of a deal as they're making it out to be?
Right. So you're young, right? I think I was 20, turning 21 or just turned 21. I was young in the NFL, right, when I started out. So you come in having a good year, you know, as a rookie, you break your hand, boom. You have to build that confidence back up, right? Because you're in the NFL. All these guys are talented, right? You're sitting out for multiple weeks, you know, and then you come back. You got to get back in rhythm, you know? Like it doesn't, if it was that easy, everyone in the world go out there and do it, you know? So you got to get back in rhythm and stuff. For a young player, it's harder for some people than it is, to figure that aspect out, taking care of your body, doing the right things, just, getting back to the game. So it was hard for me. And then to come back year two and break my hand and pretty like in the same place, I'm like, what's going on? Like, so yeah, it was pretty hard getting back from injuries, but I always figured it out. Even when I was, on the Giants, I was the starting X receiver before. People don't know that I was a starting X receiver before I tore my ACL.
Wow.
I was starting, and I tore my ACL in training camp, and boom, I missed the whole season. I come back, new coach. This coach didn't bring me here. Whole new coaching staff. Now, it's a lot that goes into, the back office of football. It's not always what people see on Sundays, people out there just making plays.
Yeah, great point. I mean, context is so important. In football, I always say everything affects everything else. And, it's so true. All right, Corey, before I let you go, this is year 2 for you now at TCU? You're into your second season coaching at TCU?
Yeah, so I was at TCU trying to see what I'm about to do, if I'm going to go back. I got a couple other offers on the table, want to bring me aboard. So just trying to figure out everything,
Awesome. I mean, that's really cool, and good luck to you. It's sort of weird, I would imagine, for you to be coaching at TCU, given the Baylor side of things.
Yes.
But good for you, man. Keep up great work, and obviously keep in touch, and let's see where you go from here.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all so much.
Thanks, Corey.
Corey Coleman joining us here, the former top 15 pick in the NFL draft, of course, record-setting Baylor wide receiver and TCU assistant wide receivers coach joining us here on Big 12 Radio, talking through the draft. All right, along with James Westling, I'm Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. Our From Saturdays to Sundays series continues next. Well, actually concludes. We're making our way through all these teams, and we're talking BYU and Texas Tech. One big-time player at BYU, many at Texas Tech. We've talked through some of them. We'll talk through all of them next as our draft series continues a day before the NFL draft with James Amari. It's Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn. Watched on Big 12 Studios.
Bachmeier delivers, caught miraculously by Chase Roberts. Comfortable in the pocket here. Chase Roberts turning it, coming the other way, inside the 30, and Chase Roberts.
And it is a bookstore, but it's really a museum.
Well, they might put that one in the museum one day. Good catch by Chase Roberts at BYU. 5 minutes to go in the first. Bachmeier surveys, pulls, touchdown Cougars. Mr. BYU, Chase Roberts.
Off the RPO, what a strike! Chase Roberts chugging across the 40, tight ropes the sideline, and finally pulled down by Darian Lewis at the 4-yard line.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio with James Westling. I'm Ari Tepke. Great stuff from Corey Coleman, legendary Baylor wide receiver, also legendary J.J. Pierce receiver, which is a big deal for us because both James and I live in that area, and our kids will eventually go to high school together at Pierce, which is kind of cool.
Fascinating that he said he was under investigation, and he kind of chuckled about that. And the investigation wasn't anything that he did wrong or that Baylor did wrong. It was just that back in 2013, a 5-star blue-chip prospect didn't go to Baylor. And so when he signed with Baylor, it raised a lot of red flags about why is this kid choosing Baylor over an Oregon or Ohio State or Michigan, all the other Texas, all the other programs that wanted that track speed. He was a track superstar, by the way. And it's the little things, like Art Briles being willing to come into his home when he's living in a rough part of Dallas, and all the other coaches are like, hey, meet me at Chili's or Applebee's or whatever. That's ultimately what put his faith and trust in what Art Briles was doing at Baylor.
Yeah, if you missed that interview, check it out either on the Big 12 Conference YouTube channel, Big 12 Studios, of course, on the TuneIn podcast page or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, our series profiling NFL draft picks out of the Big 12. We've reached the final 2 teams in our discussion as we've gone through every team and all their prospects across this entire series. We are presented by Modelo. From Saturdays to Sundays, the NFL draft and the Big 12, where tomorrow certainly a few Texas Tech players could hear their name called. Certainly one will. But let's get through those. I mean, we talked defensive ends yesterday, so anything more to add on David Bailey or Romello Height?
No, not really. I mean, I would just say that, like, Texas Tech, this is the birth of a new era when it comes to their NFL draft pipeline. They are sending a freight train of players to Pittsburgh for the draft, and this is only the beginning.
And yet, despite that, they're still projected to be the number 1 team in the Big 12 next year.
And the odds-on favorite to go undefeated in college football among all programs, Kalshi, however you say that, Poly Market, both have Texas Tech with like a 40% chance of running the table this season in college football, which would be another remarkable feat. They had 1 loss last year, and this year might be even better. So there are so many guys that over the next decade are going to be pros from Texas Tech. It is truly, like I said, kind of the birth of a new age of the NFL draft.
Yeah, 8 players to the combine out of Texas Tech, which set a record. They could set a record for players drafted this year, depending on how many of these guys end up getting drafted. But let's start with Jacob Rodriguez, a guy that we haven't talked a ton about. And, I mean, look, you cannot argue with what he did in 2025. I mean, he was an All-American and the Bednarik Award, Lombardi Award, Nagurski Award, Butkus Award, finished 5th in the Heisman Trophy race, you know, was easily the best defensive player in college football, and it wasn't actually particularly close. Red Raiders coaches referred to him as the quarterback of the defense, and if you turn on the tape, that's the number 1 thing you see. He's quick off his spot with great backfield vision. I mean, he's smart. He's a smart player. He is either instinctual or very smart. He's always in the right spot. And, of course, you can't argue with the turnover as well. And what's interesting is many of the draft profiles I read about him, there wasn't a ton brought up about, like, his turnovers, which was interesting. Like, his ability to strip the ball away, his ability to just strong-arm the ball away, interceptions, just has a nose for the football.
Yeah, instincts, right? I mean, those are all instincts. Led the nation with those 7 forced fumbles. He had 4 interceptions. And if you're looking for high upside guys, I think we see Jacob Rodriguez in his production at linebacker and think he's a plug-and-play guy who has peaked. He has not peaked. The guy's only been playing linebacker for 3 years. He started his football career as a quarterback and was playing quarterback at Virginia before he transferred to Texas Tech and added a bunch of weight. So when you say he's the quarterback of the defense, he is literally a quarterback who's playing linebacker. And he's a guy, to me, that has a higher ceiling and upside than I think he's getting credit for. Maybe because he was too productive in college, if that could even be a thing.
Well, and it's interesting because he's become very polarizing. Because I think at first it was like he's a first-round pick, and then it's almost like they went the other way, and it's like, well, he's a 3rd or a 4th-round pick. And it's like, I bet you he settles either end of first, early second. He's the guy that could potentially be the second player for Texas Tech. We hear his name called tomorrow. At the Combine, Rodriguez reached a top speed of 18.43 miles per hour during the backpedal and react drill, the fastest by any linebacker over the last 4 years, nearly a full mile per hour faster than the next closest linebacker.
Insane.
He also led all linebackers in college football with a 94.8 PFF run defense grade last season. Dane Brugler, his write-up on him says, Rodriguez has a very average size profile, but his athletic versatility has made him a more instinctive linebacker and helps him play decisively. He should immediately compete for a starting role in the NFL. So I think like the contentious part is he's 6'1", 231 pounds with below average arm length, and then he had a 13.9 missed tackle rate in 2025 per PFF, which is really interesting because he's got such a high missed tackle rate, but yet graded out as high as he did via PFF in terms of his run stuffing. Those two things don't make any sense to me. But he's a guy you can plug in at linebacker, and he's going to be a all-pro type guy for a decade.
Okay, if he was...
I genuinely believe that.
Yeah. If he had one of the highest missed tackle rates and he still had over 140 tackles or whatever it was he in on every single play?
Yes.
Like, what are the percentage of plays that he wasn't around the ball?
Great point.
And then he led all linebackers in 3 different categories, which the close range, like foot speed categories. Linebackers, you don't want them running 40 yards on every play unless it's sideline to sideline. The best linebackers in the NFL are the guys that are making the stops and don't need, like, the only knock on him was his 40-yard dash. It was tied for 7th, which isn't even that bad. There were a ton of linebackers at the combine. It blows my mind. And if there's a wild card in this draft, I think it's him. Like a guy that maybe gets drafted higher than all the other mocks and really shakes things up. I think the only thing hurting him is that teams just don't draft linebackers that high anymore.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. It's the positional side of it. And by the way, like if you remember Puka Nacua, who's maybe the best receiver in football right now, ran a 4.57 40. So like for a wide receiver, nearly a 4.6 40. By the way, nobody had more explosive plays in the NFL last year than Puka Nacua. So sometimes 40 could be deceptive.
Yep.
Lee Hunter, interior defensive lineman, 6'3.5", 318 pounds. Not much of a pass rushing upside with him, but like what you're going to get. He cannot be moved off blocks. He is extremely disruptive against the run. Teams that want to stop the run and maybe aren't picking high enough to take a Caden McDonald, Lee Hunter for me is as good as McDonald, and especially at what he does, and especially being a one-trick pony. The biggest thing for him is, can he be a 3-down defensive lineman? Because again, the pass rushing part is, shows that he might not be able to be a 3-down defensive lineman to hold up in pass situations.
Yeah, he's just a massive specimen, and he was dominant when he was at UCF. The number 2 rated defensive lineman in the portal by ESPN when he transferred to Texas Tech, was the anchor and the centerpiece of that defensive front that led the country in rushing defense. The only thing maybe not to like is he didn't have the best measurables, as you noted, at the combine. And so it's how do you evaluate combine numbers versus on-field production. He was a dominant bull rusher every single play, and he is hungry. He's a guy that loves football. Remember, Joey McGuire gave the team like an extra couple of days off before the college football playoff because Lee Hunter wanted to go home and see his kid. Like, he's very mature. He understands what's at stake for his future, and so I think somebody's getting a steal as a day 2, or if he is a day 3 pick.
No question about it. As a Bears fan, I'd love to see the Bears go after Lee Hunter with one of their 2 late second-round picks. They're picking at 57 and 60, and Hunter for me is the perfect for a team that was really bad against the run. You sort of know what you're going to get. Like, he is he can take on double teams. He is a space eater, 2 gapping nose, who's pretty light on his feet for his size. Skylar Gill-Howard. Man, I love Skylar Gill-Howard's story. He went from a scout team linebacker at Northern Illinois, a former Division II walk-on, to becoming an impactful defensive tackle for the Red Raiders. He had that ankle injury midseason, so the biggest knock on Skylar Gill-Howard is his lack of production and just lack of experience. 7 career starts at fewer than 1,000 defensive snaps. But, 235-pound linebacker coming out of high school. He was 0 stars. So he had to walk on at Division II Upper Iowa University. He played 4 games in 2021 and left the program after his freshman season, spent the next 6 months training while he worked at FedEx at Mitchell International Airport in Milwaukee. So walked away from football, then got an opportunity with some former teammates at Upper Iowa who went to Northern Illinois, and they were like, hey, you should take a look at this guy, Skylar Gill-Howard, and the rest is history. He joins their defensive line, puts himself in position to get some money in NIL to transfer to Texas Tech. And, he's still athletic. He projects a rotational 3 technique. This is a guy that may not get drafted, but if I'm looking for a guy with a lot of upside in the 7th round, you could do a lot worse than Scouther Gil Howard. Very athletic for a big dude.
Yeah, he had impressive combine numbers. The only thing holding him back would be his lack of on-field production, and not even production, maybe just opportunities,
right,
because he had so many injuries. That leg injury mid-season really kind of derailed what was shaping up to be a monster, like first-team All-Big 12 season. You saw the highlight off the top there here on Big 12 Studios of his pick 6, where he ran like 60 yards to the house in a non-conference game. He's a steal as an undrafted free agent. Also, Joey McGuire said he was the ultimate teammate, the ultimate leader, the back half of the season after he got hurt. And a big reason why Texas Tech didn't drop off on the defensive line, because they had so much depth, and he was like another coach on the sideline. So he's got a really high football IQ. He'd be a great steal for somebody late.
Taking a look at the Texas Tech potential draft picks here, could they have 8? Could they have 9? Caleb Douglas is the next player to talk about. 6'4", 206 pounds, ran a 4.39 40. So that could get him drafted. But the 206 is the one part that you got to look out for. He's very slender. He started all 27 games over the last 2 seasons, led the Red Raiders in both receiving yards and touchdowns in 2025. Had 29 catches of 20-plus yards over the past 2 seasons, which is 10th in all of FBS. But I think the knock on him, and you read some of the scouting reports and even watching the tape, like, defenders can disrupt him more than his 6'4" frame would lead you to believe. Physical corners that press up against him can really take him out of plays and knock him off his path, which affects his timing and his route running. So, that's the one part where it's like, man, how is he in traffic? How is he with contested catches? How is he with the physicality at 206? He's got to add some weight here because the slender build is not going to help him in the NFL.
Yeah, it's 6'4" with 4.39 speed. That alone makes him very attractive. I would think you could add 10, 15 pounds of muscle, and all of a sudden you've got a high-level wide receiver 1 in the NFL. 15.6 yards per catch, 5th best among all Big 12 wide receivers. He really shined at the Senior Bowl, generated a lot of buzz there, and then at the Combine, ran a much faster 40 than I thought he would run. I think his speed is deceptive because he is so long and lanky. He's got these really long strides. But that's a size-speed combo. Has a tremendous catch radius because he has super long basketball player-type arms. CBS mocks him as a 5th-round pick, which I think would be a really good spot for him to get drafted as a top 5 round pick and a steal for somebody that makes the roster right away.
Yeah. The next one is Reggie Virgil, who what's interesting, and I guess I didn't know this, he's pretty new to the position. He actually was a quarterback and moved from quarterback to wide receiver back in 2020. And then he put himself in NFL radars after his breakout season as an all-MAC level player at Miami of Ohio in 24, and then, of course, moves on to Lubbock for his final season where he leads the Red Raiders in catches and was a huge part of their offensive firepower. Virgil had more catches, 57, than he had in his 3 previous seasons combined this past year in 2025. So I think if you're looking for a late-round flyer at wide receiver, like for me, he's got way more upside than Caleb Douglas does.
Yeah, not quite as big. And Texas Tech, he really wasn't on their radar until James Blanchard talked to NFL scouts. And they said, hey, you should look at this guy. He's got tremendous hands, kind of a gadget receiver, good speed, elusive route runner, and he's explosive. A very different skill set than Caleb Douglas. He's probably a slot receiver in the NFL, but he's expected to be a day 3 pick. He is ranked as a top 25 receiver in the entire class. And again, it's a really deep receiver room once you get into like the 2nd and 3rd rounds. So he'll definitely hear his name called at some point.
The other guys that could potentially get drafted, Baron Morton, of course, the quarterback, Bryce Ramirez, the inside linebacker, and Cole Wisniewski, the safety. Cole Wisniewski posted a 36.5-inch vertical and a 10.2 broad jump at the pro day for Texas Tech. So a lot of athletic upside for a guy at safety, and Cole Wisniewski, who's another big-time transfer portal addition from last season.
Yeah, and Baron Morton, he has the arm strength to play in the NFL. I mean, the kid can really spin it. Mel Kiper ranks him 17th among all quarterbacks. How many quarterbacks get drafted? Remember last year there were only 3 in the first 3 rounds, and then you had like 9 taken in rounds 6th and 7th. So do we get to the point where he's drafted? I would lean he's probably an undrafted free agent. And Baron Morton's also a kid that, like, he has such a bright future in whatever he does. He's really smart. He's already got a bunch of land that he's leasing out to others, and so he's found ways to make income outside of football. And he told us he wanted to go in golf management sales when we talked to him at Big 12 Media Days. So it'll be interesting just to kind of see how much he chases the NFL dream. But he'll definitely have a chance. Like, somebody will pick him up either late 7th or as an undrafted free agent, and he'll be in a camp.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's clearly limited by the arm strength and then the injury history. I think that's a big reason why he probably won't get drafted. But he's got a shot to. And I think of these other guys, like Cole Wisniewski to me is a really interesting player and a pretty good safety draft.
Really good safety. I'm surprised that there's not more buzz about him. He was an FCS All-American at North Dakota State. He was the only guy that could contain Travis Hunter in any capacity when they opened the season against Colorado 2 years ago. I think he's a stud.
Yeah, we're going to talk safeties as well as BYU. That was the other team we didn't get to that we were supposed to highlight today, who finished second in the Big 12. It has one stud draft pick, but maybe only one draft pick overall. We'll get into that next as our From Saturdays to Sundays Big 12 the NFL Draft Series continues. We are powered by Modelo. Safeties and BYU next. It's Big 12 Today with James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Ball is out. That whole thing just exploded. And Romello Height recovers it.
First down. Jackson run down from behind. Romello Height is another one. Call it the dog position. Well, he is a dog.
Up here. Here comes Height. Romello Height brings it down. Ball is free. It's a scoop and score for Curry.
Talk about prime-time players. Make prime-time plays.
First down with Ruin in motion. Daniels. Height is behind him, and he smoked him.
Look at the speed of which he gets to the quarterback. You have no chance.
Back in Texas. Look out here. You wanted them to be aggressive, but there's only so much you can do, and Romello Height is knocking on your door.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn. Watched on Big 12 Studios. Some interesting music here. Is this a Christmas song?
Not sure how that got in the rotation, but it's there. Not your fault, Will. It happens.
It's Christmas in April. The NFL draft is tomorrow. What could be better?
It truly is Christmas in April.
What player will Santa carry down the chimney for us? Who will he put under the tree?
Hopefully Reuben Bain at number 9 for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I don't want to see the Jets take David Bailey. It'd be cool to see him go number 2, and we'll talk about it tomorrow and Friday and how exciting it is for him to go number 2, but I'd love to see him anywhere else.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, let's talk BYU now. We just profiled Texas Tech's draft prospects in our series from Saturdays to Sundays. The Big 12 of the NFL Draft presented by Modelo, and our final team to discuss is BYU, who, we could certainly talk about some of these other guys, but their best draft prospect would be Jack Kelly, and perhaps their only guy to be drafted this weekend because a lot of their best players return. Now, Kelly is a really interesting story because, he comes over with former BYU defensive coordinator from Weber State as one of the many players that came over to become impactful BYU defensive players. Kelly is extremely disruptive. As not a outside linebacker, he's more of an inside linebacker, but he can really rush the passer. I think that's his greatest strength is rushing the passer. I mean, he is extremely explosive rushing the edge. He can rush the interior. He was like a big culture setter for BYU's defense, a huge leader for them. For me, he's a potential late-round steal. I think he's profiled as a fifth-round pick. But, if you're looking for a pass-rushing linebacker who's not exactly a traditional outside linebacker pass rusher, who can kind of win on the edge, has really good underrated athleticism to win off the edge, Kelly's your guy.
And a really awesome story. Grew up as a BMX kid.
Yeah.
Right? So
we talked about the inline skating of Keith Abney, and then Kelly was a BMX champion.
Yeah, he started BMX racing at age 3. Won his first sponsored championship at age 5. So he didn't start playing football until high school because he focused on BMX racing. So he comes out of high school as a three-star prospect, spends 3 years at Weber State, and then he transfers to BYU. 5 sacks, 10 TFLs, College Football Network's Defensive Newcomer of the Year in the league in his first year. And then this past season, 10 sacks in 12 games, had a touchdown off a blocked field goal. He's athletic, team captain both years, so he's a leader. A 4.57 40-yard dash, which was 8th among linebackers. Ran a 4.19, though, in the 20-yard shuttle, which tied for first among all linebackers. So I think he probably gets drafted. It's just a matter of where.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on how NFL teams project him as like a traditional linebacker, right? Because he's not exactly, an edge-rushing outside linebacker from a size standpoint, but he's got the ability to be really effective rushing the passer and getting tackles for loss in the backfield when they employ him that way. It's just whether or not he's a legitimate 3-down linebacker, because he did at times, I think, not play well in the run game, and in terms of angles, in terms of kind of just throwing his body as opposed to wrapping up and tackling. That's some of the scouts knock on Kelly, but a guy that I think projects really well at the NFL level. Also, he was called by scouts one of the toughest players in this draft. Really interesting.
Sports Illustrated has him going as a 3rd-round pick to the Patriots, so he could be as high as a 3rd-round pick. The consensus seems to be 4th round or 5th round, but BYU kind of has a long, lengthy drought that's going to end this weekend because he'll definitely get taken. And I think there's 2 other guys that could get taken as well.
Yeah, let's talk about the other one. Chase Roberts, the wide receiver, 6'2.5", 210 pounds. He's projected as a 6th or 7th round pick, perhaps a UDFA. What do you see with Chase Roberts?
Well, he's just massive. He's 6'5", 220 pounds. He was a highly touted prospect out of high school. He chose BYU over USC and Stanford and Utah. His dad played defensive back at BYU back in the 90s, had a mission before he enrolled at BYU, so he's entering the league at 25 years old. Had a hip injury his freshman year that set him back, but then after that he was a 4-year starter. Finished with 2,600 receiving yards at BYU, 12th in program history in touchdowns, but his combine didn't go great. And by his own admission, he thought he would test better. He was disappointed. Ran a 4.64 40. That was last among the 34 receivers who ran. Now, when he was healthier, apparently he was a little bit dinged up at the combine. When he was healthier at BYU's Pro Day, he ran a 4.51. That's a massive difference and a massive gap in where a guy could get taken. So if he runs a 4.51 at the combine, he's probably a 4th or 5th round pick. Running a 4.64, he maybe goes undrafted, but he could still be a steal, is my point.
Yeah, the last guy to talk about is Carson Ryan, the tight end, who's projected as a 7th round pick or UDFA. Had 45 for 620 and 3 touchdowns in the one season he had at BYU after stops at UCLA and Utah. And I think, in terms of his profile, like his ability to block stands out way more than his pass catching ability.
And he still had 45 crabs and almost 700 yards. Had 3 touchdowns this year, averaged almost 50 yards per game. Pro Football Focus did list him as the best late-round tight end prospect in the entire class. So if he does get drafted, it wouldn't be shocking. But I think either way, he's going to have a chance to make a team as an undrafted free agent.
Well, and I mean, the thing about Ryan is you know what you're going to get, and it feels like when you're drafted in the 6th or 7th round or UDFA, you need guys that are able to play on special teams, and he's a guy that, he will excel in whatever he could do. If he can make a 53-man roster, I could see this guy becoming an 8-10-year NFL player based on his work at special teams. He may not even see the field offensively, but just as a major special teams contributor, I could see that in a big way. So there are lots of players that have made NFL careers that are big special teams players and aces. He's a guy that I could certainly project as being that, Carson Ryan, the tight end.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk safety position. That does it for all of the teams to discuss. Let's talk safety. And in talking safety, you probably have to start with Bud Clark. But there's some really good safeties to talk about, many of which we've profiled, including Clark, who is the only player in FBS with at least 3 interceptions in 4 consecutive seasons. Pretty good ball skills for a safety.
Yeah, he leads the country in career interceptions among anybody eligible for this draft. He also ran a 4.4 140. I've seen him day 2, early day 3. Mel Kiper lists him as 5th among all safeties. Bleacher Report has him at 7th, and CBS currently has Bud Clark as their also 7th, but going 76th overall. Like, there's a lot of really good safeties and could be as many as 3 drafted in the first round. Just over 200 tackles, ball hawking, ran a 4.4 140, had 4 interceptions alone, including multiple pick sixes. Like, he plays the ball like a wide receiver, long, rangy. He's going to be a starter in the NFL.
Well, I wonder if he projects more as a corner than he does at safety. 6'1", 188 pounds. He's kind of undersized in terms of being a safety. And for a guy that's been as ball hawking in his career as he's been, for me, I just wonder how teams will project him in terms of being a corner. Either way, I don't know that his value is hurt by that because, corner's got a lot of value. Safety has a lot of value. It just kind of depends on if you buy into at his size, he can still make an impact at the safety position. But a guy that's certainly done it. And I mean, ball skills and instincts are genuinely elite. The durability and the lean, sub 200 pounds is the one you worry about. He has missed games over the course of his career. All right, Genesis Smith, 6'2", 202 pounds. 3rd team All Big 12 last year. Again, we've talked a lot about Arizona's secondary. Going to be tough to replace these 3 guys. 3 of them will get drafted. I think Smith may be the best.
Yeah, Smith is rated as the 4th best safety in this entire draft by CBS, and he's not as big in terms of his length as a Bud Clark. He's 6'2", but he's over 200 pounds. He ran a 4.5 flat 40, had a 42.5-inch vertical. Now, Mel Kiper has him as the 10th best safety. And again, there's kind of a gray area between is a guy a safety or a corner, much like linebacker or edge rusher with Malachi Lawrence. These guys are versatile. He had almost 80 tackles, long, rangy, has the sideline-to-sideline quickness to cover a lot of ground, but his knock is that he's a liability as a run defender. But I would think at 6'2", 202, you can build that body and mold him into a better run stopper. The instincts are there in the secondary.
Right. I mean, his range, his instincts, I think his ability to read the quarterback, he's tall, long, athletic, functional speed. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I think will become, a major contributor at the NFL level. How about your guy, VJ Payne?
Dude, VJ Payne was the fastest player on K-State's team this year, and he played safety. 6'3", 210 pounds, and again, a late bloomer. So he was a linebacker in high school, went to a small high school in the state of Georgia. He moves to safety at K-State, becomes the first K-State player to start a season opener as a true freshman in over 30 years, and then he had a long, successful career. I believe he could have come back next year, but he goes a year early because of where he's going to be picked, which is probably late to day 2, early day 3. Now, Mel Kiper has him ranked 13th among all safeties. Genesis Smith, who's 10th among all safeties, is projected as a second-round pick. The size-speed combination for VJ Payne, and he was a heat-seeking missile this past season. Like on blitz packages, nobody got in the backfield quicker. You're watching a highlight of him pulling down a quarterback on a sack. He's a linebacker mindset, bloodlines in a safety body. So I think he's a really high, raw, like upside guy.
Yeah, no, agreed. And the versatility piece, you know, he played free safety, he played strong safety, he played in the box. Like they used him all over the field. His speed, his size. It's funny as we move our way down, like you had Bud Clark at one size, then Genesis Smith was bigger, and VJ Payne's even bigger than those guys. I mean, he measured at 6'3" at a fourth with 206 pounds.
And I think he had the fastest 40 time among all safeties at the combine. Like
4.40.
Yeah, he ran a ridiculous 40 time.
All right, other safeties. Cole Wisniewski is the next guy that I have, and he's even bigger than the 3 previous guys we just discussed. Wisniewski is a guy we kind of briefly touched on there with Texas Tech. 6'3", 218 pounds, was a linebacker at North Dakota State, moved to safety ahead of the 23 season, and then put together an FCS All-American type season. Interceptions, and then had a foot injury in the summer of 24, which wiped out his entire season. He transfers to Texas Tech. He became the 11th most valuable safety via PFF's wins above replacement metric, wins above average metric, I should say. So I think Wisniewski has the most upside of anybody we're talking about here at the safety position.
Yeah, and he had a really good Shrine Bowl with Dalton Johnson and with Miles Rouser in that All-Star game. Dalton Johnson's the other one that could be a linebacker, could be a safety, 6'3", 220 pounds. Supposed to be a guy that gets drafted from Arizona. Mel Kiper has him 20th among all safeties, and he has Wisniewski at number 23, guys that would be late-round picks. If Dalton Johnson gets drafted, it'll be the second straight year, make it the third straight year, that the Arizona Wildcats have had 3 players drafted. That hasn't happened since 1998, 99, and 2000. So like Brent Brennan, this is just another sign that he's building something at Arizona, but he's a fringe pick. And then Miles Rouser, who I just noted, would be the only other guy that I see. He's ranked in like the 400s, so probably an undrafted free agent, but he could be a free or strong safety in the NFL. He's pretty versatile, just not as big as you'd want to see. He's 6 foot, 190 pounds.
Yeah, and that's same with Dalton Johnson. The size thing is what will maybe keep him off getting drafted. You know, 5'11", 192 pounds, but he was productive. I mean, you know, we talked about this yesterday, but the eye of the sky does not lie, and you watch his production. Despite his size, dude produced at a high level. The question is, does that translate? But he's got a nose for the football. Yeah, I like Dalton Johnson a lot. Again, I'm buying the Arizona secondary. But I'll say this, just based on the work I've done for this draft, Wisniewski, for me, a ton of upside. I just don't know what I'm missing with him.
Yeah, I didn't realize how big he is. I got him and Johnson flipped. He is 6'4", 220 pounds.
Yes.
Like, he is a one of the heavier safeties in this draft, and he also ran like a respectable 40 time, a 4.52. Like, that's not – Caleb Douglas ran a 4.5 whatever, and Chase Roberts runs a 4.64. Those are receivers, and Wisniewski runs a 4.52. Like, that is very capable speed to play in the NFL. And again, he was an FCS All-American. I don't know if there was maybe a bigger like transitional phase for him that scouts are scared of, but I thought he was a beast of this season for Texas Tech.
All right, let's talk draft with Ian Cummings, NFL draft analyst for PFSN 365. He joins us next. This is our From Saturdays to Sundays Big 12 of the NFL series. The NFL draft starting tomorrow, where we've got you fully covered here on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Still looking downfield, and it's intercepted. Intercepted. Trade Stukes, first of all, made a great play to pick that one off.
Be successful. Picked up the blitz. Salter's in trouble. The game is really moving too fast for him right now. Stukes again comes through to get him on a loss of 2.
He's got time. His pass to the sideline is intercepted. Traden Stukes with a purloined pigskin.
Robertson has to check it down. And again, Arizona is there to crunch it. Traden Stukes leads the defense.
Johnson is hit, and he is dropped. Traden Stukes was shot out of a cannon.
He's ready to pressure because the safety's got him capped. And what's he do? Runs through the back and gets to Avery Johnson.
Sawyer Robertson looking for the lead. Intercepted instead. Traden Stukes on his senior day.
Today on Big 12 Radio, we are presented by Modelo, talking through the NFL Draft. And a reminder, of course, you can always check out some of our great podcasts, great segments with Talking Draft from Saturdays to Sundays. We've done a whole series talking through every draft prospect across every team in the Big 12. Of course, the draft tomorrow. The first round starts tomorrow night in Pittsburgh with rounds 2 and 3 on Friday. And then, of course, the rest of the draft on Saturday. We're going to recap the whole draft for you on Monday's show, talking through all the Big 12 players that got drafted and then looking ahead to the 2027 prospects for the potential draft picks out of the Big 12 in 2027.
So while we await our potential guest, Ian Cummings, who's with Pro Football Network, they have a mock draft simulator.
It's amazing.
I'm redrafting for the Kansas City Chiefs back in 2021 right now.
It's the greatest. I cannot tell you how much time I've spent. Some would say wasted. I would say not wasted at all on the draft simulator. And what I do is when there's a guy picked that I want, I stop the draft, I undo the last few picks, I make a trade to that team, and then I get the guy I wanted.
To make sure he lands with your team. That makes
Right.
sense. Okay.
All right. Let's talk now with Ian Cummings from PFSN. And I actually host a draft show on the Bears with one of his colleagues over at PFSN, Jacob Infante. But let's talk with Ian Cummings now here, NFL draft analyst for PFSN. What's up, Ian? How are you? Ian, you got us.
Yep, I got you.
There it is.
How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing very well. We were just talking about the mock draft simulator from ProFootballNetwork.com, where I have spent way too much time. Maybe not enough.
Enjoying it.
Yeah. I mean, man, do I feel like an NFL GM now? And I was just saying, like, there's a guy that I want, and then he gets drafted. I undo those. I pause draft, undo picks, make a trade, and voila.
Yep. It's fun, man. The undo pick is a new feature, so it's like in the past I would take the snipe with pride. You know, it's like, okay, they got my guy, it's fine. I'll do something else. But now it's like the intrusive thoughts set in. It's like I can just undo a couple picks and get my guy, right? But no, it's fun. And here's the thing: you'll prep for all the outcomes, and the draft will still surprise you on Thursday. So it's a great tool for that. But we're gonna do even more with it next year.
That's awesome, and really love what you guys are doing at PFSN. And I mentioned this, not sure if you heard, but I co-host the Chicago Draft Room podcast with your colleague Jacob Infante, who's really good as well. But so you just mentioned that surprise piece, and the big thing we've talked a ton about both here and in my podcast with Jacob is like the discrepancy from a talent perspective. Like there's some high level talent in this draft, but you know the guys ranked anywhere between 20 and 50. It feels like all 32 teams are gonna have guys ranked differently in their draft board.
Yeah, there's, that effect is present to a degree every year. It feels like, you always have, I like to look at it as you go from round to round. Like round one, generally there's a relative consensus as to who's going to be worthy of a round one pick, right? You get to round two and the variance fans out by an exponential factor. Round three, another exponential factor. And then you get to day three and you have 32 different boards with hundreds of different guys who could potentially come off the board. So that fanning out process is present every year, but I feel like it's going to happen quicker this year, right? Like you mentioned, once you get to the 20th overall pick, 25th, it's going to be very surprising, very interesting to see where guys go, because I look at so many guys in that 20 to 50 window, Jacob Rodriguez, Traden Sukes, Keelan Rutledge, the list goes on and on. Guys who could go late round one or maybe even fall to the 40s or 50s, right? So it just depends on how the board falls, where teams are looking, but there's so much potential energy for volatility this year, and it's I like to tell people, like, hey, we can prepare as much as we can, but at the end of the day, when that moment comes, all we can do is just sit back and watch.
Yeah, so you mentioned like picks in the 20s, and that makes sense. Where do you think the volatility begins? Like, is it pretty well known where the top 3, top 5 are going to land, or does it start that early on?
I think, in the top 10, you have a decent idea of who's going to go within that range, right? So we'll start there. Fernando Mendoza, obviously, Arvell Reese, David Bailey seem to be consensus guys who will probably go top 5. Jeremiah Love, I don't see him getting out of the top 7 if he doesn't go to the Titans. I think the Commanders would be the fit for him. Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, CZ Maui Noah, Spencer Fano, Mansour Delane, maybe Jermon McCoy, even though the medical's with him, right? That's the thing. Even with some of these top guys like Jermon McCoy, you got Jordan Tyson, right? Ruben Bain. There are potential questions, right? Bain Lane being the arm length, Tyson and McCoy the potential medicals, right? So I'd say you get outside of that blue chip tier of like 8 or 9 guys, and that's when the volatility takes a step up, right? That's where you can start to see players like, I don't know, Blake Miller or Monroe Freeland capitalize on that, right, and rise up the board a little bit. But still, those guys are likely to be first rounders, right? I think, like you said, you get to the 20s, and that's when that top tier of prospects, that first round tier, starts to get to its conclusion, right? And then you get to the defensive tackle group, which we haven't even discussed, like Peter Woods, right? Very polarizing as far as where he's going to land for people, right? Some people still have him as a player worthy of top 15 capital. Some people have him falling out of the first round in their mocks, right? So again, I think that's kind of that's the marker point, right? Once you get to that threshold where you're past the first tier of edge rushers, the first tier of receivers, the first tier of cornerbacks, right, and tackles, and you get into the doldrums of 20 to 30, that's where the variance really starts to take hold, in my opinion, right? So it's going to be exciting to see, and it's going to be kind of a domino effect, right? Because what happens in the 20s and 30s dictates what happens in round 2 and even on to round 3 as well. So I'd say the blue chip tier in the top 8 is relatively absolved from that, but once you get past that, it takes a step up. You get to the 20s and 30s, that's where the variance really starts to take over.
Ian, curious for kind of your thoughts on some sleepers and maybe some surprise prospects that you really like that maybe aren't projected as first round picks, and just give us a list. But if you've got guys Big 12, that would obviously be helpful too.
Yeah, I think I can start with that Arizona secondary, Trayden
Yeah.
Stoops. I think is a guy who gets he's going to get a lot of love in NFL circles, especially from win now teams, right? I was a fan of him even dating back to 2022 or 2023 because that explosiveness, it pops on film. I mean, obviously a low 4.3 in the 40-yard dash, right? But very explosive long strider as well. He's twitched up, he's fluid. But even more than that, right? The all-encompassing versatility, the ability to play the nickel. He can play a little bit of boundary corner as well, but nickel, safety, flex is extremely valuable in the modern NFL. And then he's a competitive support defender. He's got great ball skills over top. And medically, he was mostly healthy this past year, right? Obviously, that's going to be case by case for NFL teams and their medical staffs to determine whether he passes. But for teams like the Patriots and the Seahawks, the tail end of round 1, who both have potential needs long-term at safety, I can see Trayden Stoops as a guy like, hey, these are teams in the win-now mode. This guy would, help take that secondary over the top and be a really good component for them. So Trayden Stoops from the Big 12 is definitely one who catches my eye. I know he's not very much of a sleeper because he's at a premium position, but we talk about potential round 1 guys. Max Ihanachor from Arizona State is another one I think you got to mention, right? Having the size at around 6'6", 320, around 34-inch arms as well. So the measurables are there. And I just, for a guy who came the JUCO route, right? He barely played in high school. His pass sets are so clean already. I think he has a lot of the soft skills in terms of balance, knee bend, weight transfers are very smooth. And then at the Senior Bowl, it was really, really encouraging to see. His first day was a little rocky, right? In one-on-ones, he was oversetting against guys and opening the inside path for counters, right? He was not really timing his punches effectively. But day 2 and day 3 came, and he improved so much. He was so much more composed, so much more precise and patient with his timing and his upper-lower synergy. And in the run game too, he's explosive. He can get out and move. He can drive guys into the turf, and all of those things are very, very compelling with him. So I think those two stand out. I'm going to pull up the Big 12 list real quick to see if I can figure out any other players. Jacob Rodriguez, though, is another one, I think, from Texas Tech. Obviously, I mean, anytime you win 4 separate awards, like that shows you're doing something right in the same season. But you watch the film, too, and the film is really impressive. The football intelligence, the read and react ability, the processing, the range from sideline to sideline. And again, going back to the Senior Bowl, Jacob Rodriguez was the best linebacker there, and I think really acquitting himself in coverage as well. One-on-one drills, working against running backs and tight ends, threatening up the seam. He showed great fluidity, explosiveness, but then also the speed to cover all the way, or cover plays from sideline to sideline as well. So he's another one. And then my final one for this answer, I'll probably go with Malachi Lawrence, right? It's kind of the answer where he's been projected as a potential first-round pick. I have him as more graded in the 40s for myself, but again, in this edge class, right, you get past David Bailey, Arvell Reese, and Reuben Bain Jr., right? There's a little bit of a lack of certainty as to who's the next off the board, right? Keldrick Falk has the high-level run defense profile and the size, but doesn't have the pass rush projection, right? Malachi Lawrence is 6'4", 251, 34-inch arms, 4.51 speed, 40-inch vertical. So the explosiveness, the twitch, the speed around the arc, right? The power profile with the length and the compact mass. He can improve his run defense for sure. I think there are times where he over pursues when he's the clean backside defender, and also doesn't have the best play strength when trying to stack and shed and establish half-man relationships. But, this is a class where you're past that top tier of edges, right? You really want to invest in high level physical talent, guys who can reach that high ceiling as a disruptor. And to me, Malachi Lawrence fits that mold to a T. So Big 12 wise, I'd say those guys are probably the top, but there's more. I think, Bud Clark from TCU is a really fun player. I'd say Sam Hecht from Kansas State is another guy, my top center in the class, very explosive, agile, but fluid in wide zone concepts, and is a strong anchor in the pass protection game. And then obviously the Utah guys, Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu, obviously they're probably first round guys, but Lomu in particular, it's going to be interesting to see where he falls, because it seems like the consensus has been trending more to the 20s for him, but I still have him in my top 20, and I like him a lot. Comp him to Jake Matthews. So Big 12, a wide array of talent. I'm really excited to see where these guys go.
Where do you have Jordan Tyson? I've seen him all over the board when it comes to mocks.
Yeah, I think the window for me would be within the 8th overall pick to the Saints. I think as long as they clear him medically, I think that's probably the highest that he goes. I don't see him going 5. I think if the Giants took him, it would probably be with that second pick in the top 10. But I think the Saints, if they like him and they clear him with the medicals, then I could see him going 8th. I think his ultimate floor, and again, medicals invites another level of volatility to it, right? We saw Will Johnson last year, right? He was commonly mocked in round 1 all through the cycle, and then he ended up falling all the way to round 2, right? So if the medicals are concerning enough across the league, you could see him kind of the domino effect take hold a little bit. But I have to think, functional floor for him, I'd say is probably 16 to the Jets. I don't see them passing on a talent like Jordan Tyson, needing that level of 3-level threat opposite Garrett Wilson. I mean, he was underwater last year. He obviously didn't play the full season. Injuries took him out for around half of it. But even when he was, you could tell it was an uphill battle. I think any NFL receiving room needs 2 guys at least to spread defenses thin and complement each other. And Jordan Tyson, with his ability to separate independently, the twitch, the lateral mobility, right, the foot speed, the explosion, but also the fluidity to cut really tight angles on his breaks and, press vertical and then redirect in short order. And then the body control at the catch point, the rack ability. To me, as long as he stays healthy, he's a complete 3-level threat, and the Jets can really benefit. So I'd say 8 to 16 is my personal window that I'm looking at for Jordan Tyson, but I do concede the medicals are kind of an unpredictable variable that you really don't know how it's going to manifest until we get to draft night.
Yeah, great stuff. Ian Cummings, go check out the great work for Ian and all the guys at PFSN, and please make sure to check out the mock draft simulator. It's amazing.
I'm doing it right now. It's insane. I found the next Travis Kelce for the Kansas. I grew up in Kansas, so I'm doing the Chiefs. Yeah. I love how many trade offers come in. Like, this thing is so cool.
Who did you get for the tight end position? Who's the next Travis Kelce?
I just got the kid from Vanderbilt.
Eli Stowers.
Yeah, Stowers, in the back end of the 4th round.
Yeah, he's not going to be there then.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be there, but hey, that's what the mock draft simulator is for, right? Even if there's an outcome that's 1% possible, our job is to make sure that you can explore as many outcomes as possible, right? And this tight end class is so deep too. Like, there's guys like Matthew Hibner, Joe Royer from Cincinnati, right? You go to Tanner Koziel from Houston is another one, probably a day 3 guy. But I mean, there's just so many. Michael Trigg from Baylor. It's gonna be interesting to see where he goes. But it's a deep class, man. I'm gonna be so excited to see what happens.
Well, we just traded back to get Max Ahanichor from Arizona State at pick 26. That left us with pick 29, and we took Akeem Mesidor from Miami.
Nice.
Then we just loaded up
Mesidor and Ahanichor in the first round.
Yeah,
I actually love that for the Bears. As a Bears fan, I'd love the Bears to get those 2
Well,
guys.
and because of that trade, that gave us Tre'Davious Stukes mid-second round.
This sounds like the Bears draft, if I'm being honest.
I mean, it sounds like the best draft of all time. At pick 57, we took Sam Hecht from K-State.
Wow, you're just going all Big 12.
I would give that an A+ for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Let's go.
All Big 12 here.
We took Stowers from Vanderbilt.
Oh, that's right. There you go.
74.
All right. I appreciate you, Ian. Be well, man. Thank you. Enjoy the draft.
Yes, sir. You guys as well. Thank you.
Go check out the great work for Ian, Jacob Infante, my co-host on the Chicago Draft Room podcast at PFSN 360, the Pro Football Sports Network. With James Amari, it's Big 12 Today, Big 12 Radio. On the way next, we've been doing a deep dive into college basketball, recapping the seasons for each Big 12 teams. On the way next, we're talking Iowa State hoops. It's our full court review, Modelo's Big 12 basketball team recaps. Iowa State next. John Walters on the way. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Dampier, second down, loads of time. He'll pass the ball. He'll wing it near side. And a
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, full court review time. Talking Iowa State hoops, working our way up from the bottom to the top of the Big 12 standings. And it's amazing to think that Iowa State finished 5th in Big 12 standings, 29-8, 12-6 in the Big 12. This was a team that was certainly in position to be a Final Four team before they lost Joshua Jefferson in the first round of the NCAA tournament, which created a huge disappointment for a team that had a fantastic season.
Completely agree. One of the best seasons in program history, and yet it still feels incomplete. Because what if Joshua Jefferson is healthy? Does Iowa State make a run at a Final Four? I would love to have seen, because they were on the same side of the bracket as Michigan. We would have got to see an Iowa State-Michigan matchup, which could have been really intriguing. I don't know that Iowa State had the horses to hang in that game, but they definitely would have been a much better matchup than Tennessee would have put up in that game in which Michigan won by like 30. But like, defense travels every year under TJ Otzelberger. This past season, top 6 in the country in defensive rating. The offense saw steady growth and improvement and really had kind of a breakout year. Tamin Lipsey became so much better offensively as a point guard. Milan Momcilovic shattered school records for threes made and his three-point field goal percentage. He led the nation in three-point percentage at over 50%. Joshua Jefferson was one of the best passing bigs in the entire country. I mean, he became just one of 6 players since the 1974 season to average the number of points, rebounds, assists, and steals, like unicorn-type numbers for Joshua Jefferson. But now, as we look ahead, how do they replace those guys? But that's something TJ Otzelberger's done every year. He's always had this core of 3 or 4 guys that see a major uptick in their production, and then he builds around them. There's like a formula to success, and he is mastering it in Ames.
Yeah, and look, I mean, Iowa State was once again dominant at home. They did have some road struggles, including a tough loss at Cincinnati when they were the number 2 team in the country. It was on the heels of Cincinnati really making a push to be an NCAA tournament team. But beyond that, I mean, they reached number 2 in the AP Top 25, first time program history, 29 wins, most in program history. Now 3 Sweet 16s under TJ Otzelberger, but 0 Elite 8s. And look, I mean, you can make the case. Obviously, this year was dramatically impacted by Joshua Jefferson, and just getting to the Sweet 16 was a miracle. Tamin Lipsey put the team on his back against Kentucky and willed them to a Sweet 16 appearance.
Yeah. I mean, 2 years ago, the season before last, I think felt like a disappointment for Iowa State. They went 25-10. Remember, they were preseason ranked in the top 5 nationally with that Curtis Jones-led team, and a lot of these guys like Jefferson and Lipsey.
Momcilovic.
And they got up to number 2 that year as well in the AP Top 25. So you think about that. Back-to-back seasons, Iowa State men's basketball has been ranked number 2 in the country. They've been to 3 Sweet 16s, but that first one, they were an 11 seed. They were a Cinderella. 2 of the last 3 tournaments, they've been a top 3 seed in 3 straight tournaments, and to make the Sweet 16 in 2 of the last 3, and even last year when Keyshawn Gilbert got hurt and Lipsey was dealing with that groin injury, and I'm talking about 2 tournaments ago, it felt like a miracle that they even won a game. Like, I remember looking at Lipscomb and thinking, these guys are a little bit scary for a really beat-up Iowa State team, but they did. So, to me, they're one healthy season away from breaking through. They've been the unluckiest team in the history of basketball when it comes to right before the NCAA tournament injuries. Every year it feels like a starter's going down.
Yeah, and look, rebounding at times was a struggle for them, especially in the Tennessee game. I think that stands out. Tennessee was number 1 in offensive rebounding percentage. And, I mean, really, in that game, more than anything, it was the rebounding that completely doomed Iowa State. But let's turn the page to 2026, 2027, because you mentioned this, and I think, like, from an optimistic standpoint, there's a lot of reasons for optimism, not even just based on who they're adding in the portal, but the players they're bringing back, guys that really emerged. Killian Torrey, what he did and how he grew, especially as an offensive player as a freshman. We knew the defense was there, an elite defensive player. The offense kind of grew over the course of the season. I can't wait to see the next step he takes. Blake Buchanan's a guy that you love to highlight, who I thought came on really strong at the end of the year to help a front court that was undersized, and a big reason why the rebounding was not great all year.
And this core group coming back next year is a really nice place to start with Torrey, who's a top 5 perimeter lockdown defender in the league. And then Blake Buchanan shattered school records for what he did on the offensive glass. He got in some foul trouble at times, but he's athletic and physical and scrappy and a tremendous shot blocker. And then I think maybe the guy that Iowa State fans should be most excited about is Jamarion Bateman, who barely saw the floor early in the year as a freshman from Milwaukee. But towards the back half of the season, he had like a 20-point per game or a 20-point game where he hit 3 or 4 threes against, I think it may have been Kansas or Texas Tech, a high-level opponent late in the year. And I remember just watching him at the Big 12 tournament, and he looked confident. He didn't look like a freshman. And he's improving as a shooter. And he's listed at 6'3", but he plays like he's 6'7". Him and Torrey both are 2 of the longest-armed defenders in the Big 12. And then you've got Dominicus Plata, who's coming back, and it'll be his second year in the program. The international prospect who's about 6'10" and just built like a tank. So Iowa State, there's not going to be a drop-off next year.
Yeah, and I mean, they added Leon Bond in the portal, who's a transfer from Northern Iowa, who played with Blake Buchanan at Virginia in 2023-2024. So a guy that has some power conference experience, but really tore it up last year. Northern Iowa was Missouri Valley all-defensive team. Sound right to you in terms of T.J. Otzelberger profile? And according to this piece I read in Cyclone Fanatic, which does a great job at covering Iowa State, quote, very similar statistical profile to Nate Heisey in his last year at UNI. Nate Heisey, a guy that's outgoing, that came from Northern Iowa, similar statistic profile, maybe a little bit more upside in terms of the defensive end. And then Jaquan Johnson, 5'11" guard from Bradley, who's just an electric point guard. I mean, playmaking ability, outstanding ball pressure, another very high-level defensive player. I mean, they're going to have 3 guards that can get after you on the defensive end. Sound familiar?
Very much so. I mean, they've had one of the best portal classes in the country, and they're done. They've built their roster. John Walters will have more on that, but they got their work done early. They had very specific and were very selective in the portal guys that they targeted. Leon Bond started his career at Virginia under Tony Bennett, which is where Blake Buchanan came from. So there's the connection there. Really shined at Northern Iowa as one of the best players in the Missouri Valley. And then Jaquan Johnson's the headliner. Started 34 games for Bradley, who made a deep run in the NIT, by the way. Averaged 17 points, 3.5 assists, almost 3 steals per game. Like you said, the Missouri Valley Conference Defensive Player of the Year. He is another elite on-ball defender. And then I think like these role players he's brought in, Taj Manning from Kansas State's not going to get any headlines. But he started the last 18 games for a K-State team and was their leading rebounder. Only played about 20 minutes per game, but he averaged 5.5 points and over 6 rebounds in Big 12 play. He was 10th in the Big 12 in offensive rebounding rate. He was top 20 in blocked shots rate. He had a really high defensive plus-minus. Like when he's on the floor, he's an energy guy. And Iowa State and Otzelberger recruited him out of high school. It's not just a blind pickup. They know a lot about him. So I'm a huge fan of what they've done. And then Singleton from Northwestern's a stud. Prather Jr.'s maybe the headliner. We haven't talked about him from Robert Morris, who averaged 16 a game. They've brought in 5 guys that will all be very impactful.
Yeah, Trey Singleton is really interesting. He's 6'8", 215 pounds, very similar profile to Joshua Jefferson, in terms of the style he plays with. And a guy that was a 4-star recruit last year, went to Northwestern out of Jeffersonville, Indiana, and had a pretty decent season for a freshman, enters the portal, and now ends up at Iowa State again. A guy that has just a very similar profile to Joshua Jefferson.
And he was the highest-rated recruit that Northwestern had ever signed. And he had the best Northwestern freshman season since 2015, over the last 11 years. Northwestern is a stepping stone school in the case of this kid, but I thought he had a solid year for a Northwestern team that was scrappy. He had 10 double-digit scoring efforts. He had 17 points and 18 rebounds against Penn State. And again, like you said, he's 6'8". He's not as big as Jefferson. Like Jefferson was 6'9", 240 pounds, legit, like built like LeBron.
Yeah, but he's a true sophomore.
Right. So
he can grow into that.
He can add some weight.
Yeah.
He's 6'8", 215. He's a little bit rangier, but he's only 18 years old with 3 years of eligibility. Like he's going to be a guy that has a really long-term runway to maybe just contribute this season, but could be a star in a couple of years.
All right, let's talk about Iowa State with John Walters. The voice of the Cyclones joins us next as we continue our full court review, Big 12 hoops, season recaps, talking Iowa State hoops, a team that made it to the Sweet 16 for the third time in T.J. Otzelberger's tenure. John Walters joins us next. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Inbound to Bryson Tiller. And now Lipsy steps in, takes it away. Lipsy waits, flips it up. And Buchanan a throwdown. Council gets another triple. Rosario, Council again, and again he hits.
This is awesome.
Since December, it was December 6th when they knocked off #1 Purdue. Momcilovic.
Oh, great job by Flory. What a closeout.
Winding down. Momcilovic. Whoa. And they're 7 of 8 as a team in the second half from beyond the arc. McDowell trying to answer. Bedunga grabs it and puts it in. Council puts it on the floor, gets a step, and throws it down.
And El Marco, I mentioned a couple times, El Marco Jackson's been their best player in the second half.
Momcilovic. Council grabs it. Council hesitated for a second, able to hang and hit. And there's Melvin with a big bucket, and all of a sudden, it's a dozen. T.J. Otzelberger and the Iowa State Cyclones with the win.
Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo with our full court review, Big 12 hoops recaps. We're talking Iowa State hoops. John Walters, the voice of the Iowa State Cyclones, a third trip to the Sweet 16, but feels disappointing for a team that hit number 2 in the AP Top 25. John joining us now. And John, I think it's pretty obvious why this team only made it to the Sweet 16. A team that certainly had Final Four and aspirations and beyond. Losing Joshua Jefferson, probably a significant factor in the Sweet 16 exit for this team.
Yeah, unfortunately, Iowa State's had a string of bad luck through the years with guys getting hurt at just the wrong time, and not just guys, but the best guys. George Niang broke his foot the one year, and Iowa State still reached the Sweet 16 before losing to Connecticut out in Madison Square Garden. Chris Babb had a foot injury that sidelined him one year. Last year was Keyshawn Gilbert and Tamin Lipsey that were not – Keyshawn couldn't play. Tamin was nowhere near 100% in the NCAA tournament. And then, obviously, this year your consensus All-American goes down in the first 2 minutes of your first NCAA tournament game after having a great year and staying pretty much completely healthy all the way through it. So it's kind of been a stroke of bad luck. But, given the injury to him, and especially with his value to the team, I think to reach a Sweet 16 was still pretty cool. And, you had to beat Kentucky to do it, beat them handily to advance into the Sweet 16. Who knows what this team could have done if Jefferson was completely healthy. I will say Tennessee played really well the night Iowa State lost, and they were big and physical, and maybe Iowa State wouldn't have been able to beat them anyway. Who knows? But a lot of NCAA tournament basketball is just the draw and how hot you are at that moment. Now, Iowa State was playing really good basketball. Even after Joshua went down, they played really well in those 2 games, winning by 70-something points combined. But, obviously, especially against Tennessee's size and strength inside, you really needed your power forward All-American, and they didn't have them. So it is what it is, but it was a great year for Iowa State, and to win 29 games for just the third time in school history illustrates that pretty well.
John, with Tamin Lipsey out of eligibility and just everything he's done for the program, where does he rank in terms of Iowa State all-time point guards? There's been some bangers over the years. Like, is he at the top of the list or just in the conversation, you think?
He might be the most accomplished, although Monte Morris would give him a run for his money on that. Jamal Tinsley, certainly. I think Jamal Tinsley was the most talented point guard that Iowa State's ever had. He was incredible, but he was only here 2 years, so his impact on the program was short-lived. But those 2 years were back-to-back Big 12 championships. He's hard to do any better than that. Never lost to Kansas, never lost in Hilton Coliseum. So Jamal would have to be probably at the top of the list. But when you talk about impact on a program in every way, shape, and form, it's hard to top Tamin because he was the hometown kid who committed to Iowa State the minute that TJ Otzelberger took the job, coming off a 2-win season for Iowa State basketball. He said, nope, I'm all in. I'm good on this. And when they brought him in, Tyrese Hunter was still here and had a great year. He was the Big 12 freshman of the year at point guard, and they figured he'd be back. And all of a sudden he leaves and gets in the portal. Well, now Tamin's thrust into starting role. And I think that the way he handled all of that, the way that he accomplished things over a 4-year period, the leadership that he showed, the fact that he was, the National Scholar Athlete of the Year in men's basketball. I mean, you start adding all those things up, and it's pretty hard to top what Tamin did over a 4-year period, especially to do it right in front of his hometown fans. And so that impact is going to be drastically missed for Iowa State next season. I mean, you're talking about Tamin Lipsey, who did that, Joshua Jefferson, who was a consensus All-American, Milan Momcilovic, who had maybe the best three-point shooting season in the history of college basketball, and Nate Heisey, who was a really valuable contributor off the bench. And so Iowa State lost a lot. And even though they brought some good players in, I don't think we can underestimate how big a deal it is to lose those 4 guys.
Yeah. Now let's turn our attention to next season, John, because, man, I love TJ, and, obviously affirming his commitment to Iowa State. And he knows the players he's after, right? We've talked a lot about the transfer portal and how to handle it. I think some teams just go in and try to find players that put up big numbers, and then they get into bidding wars. Man, TJ, the way he operates, quickly, he knows the profile, and, they've added a lot of guards that could defend. Surprise, surprise. Man, I'm really excited about next year's roster, even with the losses they have.
No, I agree. I think he added some really good pieces, and he is so good at roster construction. And a lot of times now in college basketball, I think coaching is, 40% coaching and probably 50% roster construction and 10% relationships. And it's just, all these things matter. But I think roster construction and finding guys that fit what you want to do and will commit to what you want to do is so important. And so I think TJ's been really, really good at identifying those guys, whether it's, a Robert Jones or Jaron Holmes, or maybe guys that are flying a little bit under the radar nationally. He will go find those guys, and they will fit what he wants. I think Leon Bond from, Northern Iowa is a great example of that. He'll be a guy that can fit in seamlessly and play great defense. And obviously, Jaquan Johnson, Defensive Player of the Year in the Missouri Valley Conference at Bradley, I think will fill a nice niche and help to replace Tamin Lipsey at that point guard spot. Taj Manning's not going to blow you away with his numbers, but he's a good player and a really good individual on a team. He's a great teammate, and TJ's super excited. He recruited him in high school. He's excited to have him be a part of the program. Ryan Prather is a guy that put up really good numbers at Robert Morris, and Trey Singleton did as a freshman at Northwestern, and I think can help fill the void of Joshua Jefferson. So he brought in some good transfers. He brought in some good freshmen to go with them. But more importantly than all of that, I think he retained really key pieces from last year. And if you look at last year's team, why was Iowa State successful? I think it's because they brought back Momcilovic and Jefferson and Lipsey and Heisey. Those are guys that knew the system and knew what it took to be successful under TJ. And so they could lead those younger guys along. And I think, this year to have Blake Buchanan back and Dominicus Plata back and Jamarian Bateman and Killian Torrey, Xavier Mitchell staying, it allows you to have a core group of guys again that can kind of set the tone for everybody else in that room. And I think that's really, really important in Iowa State's program. And it's rare these days in college basketball for teams to have a nucleus back. And maybe the nucleus isn't as big as it used to be. Maybe it used to be 8 or 9 players you'd have returning. And now typically it's more 4 or 5. But still, that's better than nothing. You see so many rosters that are completely flipping year after year. And this one isn't, and I feel good about what they have coming back.
Yeah, no, I would look at Iowa State's roster and think that they've got one of the more experienced teams now in the Big 12 in terms of retention, and totally agree with you on Taj Manning. He is just a perfect fit for what Iowa State does in terms of energy and effort. But touch on Torrey and Bateman. Really excited about both those guys back. What do you think is the kind of the next step in their role next season?
Yeah, I'm excited about those two guys. I mean, I think Bateman eventually is going to be a double-digit scorer average-wise. He averaged about 6 or 7 a game last year, but I think it's very possible that this year he'll be a double-digit scorer, maybe even Iowa State's leading scorer. He's got a scorer's mentality for sure, and depending how big his role is and what he's able to accomplish within that, I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up being Iowa State's leading scorer. Killian Torrey I think surprised everybody last year with just how good he was, defensively especially. Just one of the great defenders we've seen in this program, and that really freed up Tamin Lipsey to go do his thing and kind of play free safety. And I think Torrey, with a year under his belt and that confidence he gained on the defensive end, is going to go in as one of the best defensive players in college basketball to start the season. But the capper for him is that he really figured out the offensive end of it by the end of the year. And that was something that he struggled with midway through conference play, was really struggling offensively. But the last 5 or 6 games right through the NCAA tournament, he played really well offensively and kind of got it figured out and did some of the things that he was doing early in the season. And I think he's going to be a much improved offensive player. I'm not sure he's a pure point guard, which is probably one of the reasons you bring Jaquan Johnson in from Bradley. But I do feel like the combination of those two, and Torrey can certainly play the point and be the guy that shifts over there when Johnson's out, if Johnson's the starter, or maybe Johnson backs up Torrey. Either way, I think Torrey's just a guard. He's not necessarily a point guard, and I think he'll be in that role quite a bit, but he's going to be a defensive stopper, and he's going to be defending other teams' point guards for sure.
Talking with John Walters here, voice of the Cyclones, and I want to ask you a few football questions because this is such an interesting year for Iowa State football after, the known commodity of Matt Campbell and just how successful those Cyclones teams were with Campbell. And I'd love to see our Bears draft Dom Orange. I think he'd be great for a defensive line that's been a struggle. And I think in many ways this draft sort of caps off a unbelievable run for Campbell and the talent that he brought in through Iowa State. So where is this now? Give us a sense of your thoughts on Jimmy Rogers and spring football.
I think it's been a really good transition. I think it's obviously a tough transition when you're basically starting from scratch because Jimmy Rogers has basically 80 new players on his roster. So there's going to be a low level of expectations of what Iowa State might be able to accomplish nationally this year. But I think within that room, the walls of the football building, Coach Rogers and his staff are certainly confident in what they can do and not conceding anything. And so I think he's excited to coach these guys. It's been good. Spring practice has been very lively, and it's been fun to watch. They're really getting after it. They fly around. I think he's brought in some very talented players. He's brought in some guys that came from lower levels that are trying to make their mark and prove themselves at a higher level, but really did well and maybe slipped through the cracks in the initial recruiting. He's brought in some guys from other four-year schools that do have a reputation as good players. And then he retained a few players that have actually really done well this spring. I think one thing that's pretty consistent with Jimmy Rogers is that he's been very complimentary of Matt Campbell and the program that he left for him. And he felt like the guys that stayed behind and didn't go on to Penn State or whatever, or didn't transfer out of the program and came back, are good football players that were really well coached. And so you might see some guys that were completely under the radar, Carson Willick at linebacker or Aiden Flora at running back, who had an big impact on special teams last year. His punt return against TCU is why Iowa State won that big game late in the season. But he's a guy that could play a role as a running back or a guy that you can flex out of the backfield and throw it to. And he's going to have a big role on this team. So that's been a really good thing and exciting to know that those guys that have come back are competing too. And so it's not just the guys that come in from Washington State and kind of know the system. It's everybody competing. And that's made for a lively spring practice because I think when you got a clean slate like that, a literally clean slate of a blank canvas, everybody coming in and knowing they're competing for jobs, it's an even more pure competition than you would have if you had 50 returning players. And so it's created some real competition in spring practice.
Great stuff as always from John Walters, voice of the Iowa State Cyclones. John, you're the best. Appreciate your time, brother. Be well.
My pleasure. Always good to join you guys. Thanks,
John.
John Walters joining us here on Big 12 Radio, giving us his thoughts of the basketball season, looking ahead to the 2026-2027 season, where as an Iowa State fan, despite the losses, you should be as optimistic as anybody at college basketball. And, of course, talking through this transition from Matt Campbell to Jimmy Rogers. Could be a slow year this year, but I think what's key for them is to build something heading into the following season. But who knows? I mean, we'll see what you can get with Iowa State. Jalen Rayner at quarterback now, certainly a guy that's been known, that's been productive. So it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, and I think with Iowa State and their trajectory, first-year head coach, completely new roster, they're going to struggle to win football games. Not saying they can't. Jimmy Rogers did a ton with less last year at Washington State, but Iowa State, I would say their ceiling in football is probably 6-6 and making a bowl game, which means that's going to set the table for those fans are going to be so hungry for success. Men's basketball is going to be insane. Hilton Magic will be on a whole nother level, and this is a team that's going to be really, really good. I love that the portal class that they have is top 3 in the country right now. Even after the fact, they were number 1 for a very long time. They brought in shooters. They've brought in really high-energy, elite defenders. Like right now, my way too early Big 12 favorites would be Houston and Iowa State because we don't know what Arizona's roster is going to look like next year. They've been super quiet in the portal. We know that they're probably going to have 2 freshmen that are starters. We don't know the decision and the outcome from Koa Pete yet. There are a lot of looming questions at other programs where Iowa State's very much ahead of schedule across the board. James Wesley, Ari Tepkin, Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. Some pretty significant Big 12 news just dropped within the last few hours, so we'll discuss what that means and where he might be headed next. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
The group for the Final Four.
And they're on this game for a reason.
Later with Tugler on him, Momcilovic. Shot clock winding down. Jefferson way downtown. And he knocks it down. Sharp from deep. Bangs it home. Shot clock winding down. Miller! Oh, and a throwdown. Right on Plata. Mercy. Jefferson. Good look. And Buchanan. Inside, and Uzan with a left-handed off the glass and in.
He has that down, John. Good place for a pick and roll right here. See if they can get Flemings and Sadak.
Flemings pull up. Got it.
It's a good opportunity.
Sadak spinning. Jump hook. Got it. Shot clock winding down. Lipsy. Got to get something up. Heisey catch and shoot. Jefferson. Oh, he missed it. Flemings chucks it down. Iowa State knocks off Houston. What a ball game.
It's Big 12 Radio, Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn, watch on Big 12 Studios, along with James Wesley, Amari Tepkin. Tunde Yesufu is a name that we thought would be a top 10, top 15, top 20 pick at the NBA draft. Well, he has officially put his name into the portal. this is what a lot of players are doing to give them flexibility. I believe the portal closed yesterday, did it not?
Yeah.
So you had to get it in as of 11:59. So that's what Yesufu did, right? In case he gets offered more money than he can make as a mid-first round pick. I mean, which is kind of amazing. We heard Dan Hurley earlier this offseason say that Braylon Mullins could make more money at UConn next year than he could being the 12th overall pick, which is insane. And he ended up back at UConn, so they probably raised $5-6 million to keep Braylon Mullins. I wonder what Yesufu could command. I mean, a former 5-star averaged 18 points and 6 rebounds as a freshman. So, interesting. And this shows just from a competition standpoint how good college basketball is right now.
Exactly. I mean, it's why JT Toppin will be back at Texas Tech and why he was at Texas Tech this past season. It's why Koa Pete has not entered the portal, but he also hasn't said that he's definitely going to the NBA. He hasn't made his announcement.
But he would have needed to enter the portal already, right?
Yeah, he would need to enter the portal if he was going to leave Arizona. So he's either going NBA or back at Arizona.
Yep.
Yesufu's a beast. Like, you see him in person, he has an NBA-ready body. But you also see that he's incredibly raw, and a lot of his scoring and rebounding was just raw athletic ability versus basketball instincts and IQ. Programs like Kentucky and UCLA are circling fast, and if he lands at Kentucky, he'll definitely make more money playing basketball at Kentucky than he would being a 18, 19, 20th overall pick in the NBA draft. And so that trickle-down effect is starting to just get more and more. Like it used to be guys like Milos Uzan would come back, guys that were mid to
fringe,
early second-round projections.
Fringe first-round guys.
JT Toppin, late first, early second at best, he comes back. Now we're almost like touching lottery pick levels with guys that are maybe back end of the lottery, mid to late first-round picks that are coming back to college.
Well, and this is where, like, when you hear people talking about how bad NIL, the transfer portal is, and how much it's hurt the sport, and blah, 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 blah. Like, you could certainly come up with reasons for it, but I would counter with, like, yeah, the talent level at college basketball has never been bigger. It's extremely attractive for international players now. It's extremely attractive for 5-star, surefire, one-and-done guys. Like, again, I would love to see the NBA get rid of the one-and-done rule, let anybody go that wants to, and now let's see how this thing shakes out. Would Derek Peterson have gone straight to the pros? Probably. What would that have meant for recruitment? You get a guy like Yesufu, like, would he have been one-and-done, or do you chase the riches of college basketball? And then the market piece. Like, at the top of the market, you may say it's unsustainable, but the market says otherwise. In my neighborhood, there's 2 houses that have been on the market for like a year. You've clearly priced your house above market. Clearly. Lower. The market has told you that. Well, college basketball, like, the market has told you that it's not gone crazy, that for top-level players, like Tunde Yesufu will command $4, $5, $6 million.
Right.
As he should. You are looking for guys that you can add to your roster that will help you become a Final Four team to win a national championship. The value of that is so much larger than the salaries given out, which is why they're getting paid that.
Yeah, tell your neighbors, not a good time to sell. That there are more houses for
by the way,
sale.
Other neighbors have sold houses because they've been priced right.
Oh, okay.
These two neighbors have, like, I don't know what they're waiting for. They're paying utilities. Who knows what else they're paying for? It's like, you have clearly priced your house above market value.
Well, there are more unsold homes on the market right now than there were in the 2008 crash. Like, it's really scary.
Well, and I think a lot of that has to do with, interest rates, which have actually gone down for a period. But, like,
bit. Under 6, I believe.
Yeah, and, like, if you need to buy a house, you're going to buy a house regardless of interest rates.
Right.
The problem is, like, these two people, one of them is a for sale by owner. It's like, bro, what are you doing?
I'm going to sell my house on Facebook, which is actually how we bought ours. So
that's amazing. But okay, it's cool if you could do it, but it's been a year.
Yeah. No,
sell the house.
It's realtor time.
Hire the realtor, lower the price, get rid of the house.
Are they still living in the house?
No.
They're not living in the house?
It's the family of a woman who passed away.
Okay, totally different deal.
Yeah.
Well, that's a unique situation. But with college basketball, and like I'm watching,
just talking about market value here, okay?
Market value, and I see this Michigan team, and I see this Arizona team, and the teams that were in the Final Four this year. I thought college basketball was exceptional in the late 90s and the early 2000s. I think about the North Carolina-Illinois championship, that was Bill Self's players like 02, 03. I still think that 01 Arizona team was probably a scotch better than this recent version of Arizona. But collectively, you go a little bit past that. When the NBA one and done rule really was like full throttle, college basketball from like 08 to basically now, these teams today would crush those teams. Like the product has gotten better because you've got these one and dones, or in some cases what we're going to see two and dones because of NIL. More and more players are in college basketball that otherwise would be in the NBA, whether they're ready or not, because they didn't have another option.
Or playing overseas. They're just trying to play somewhere where they can make money. There's no doubt about it. And what's interesting is when I hear Tunde Yesufu's name, the first thought I have is Kentucky, because Kentucky's got a big checkbook and they've been swinging and missing a ton.
Yep.
So it feels like if they want to go all in on a guy that they could get, potentially, it'd be Yesufu. And this on the heels of the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, releasing a statement. Quote, I am losing confidence and growing increasingly concerned with the management and decision-making at the University of Kentucky. My concerns include the creation of a new $1 million job that has no defined duties and the announcement that the new dean of law was the only candidate not recommended by law school faculty. So, I mean, this is the sitting governor of Kentucky.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a governor of any state releasing a statement about like the situation with a basketball team? That's insane.
The comments section is unhinged in the best way. When a corrupt governor starts looking into a corrupt university, get your popcorn ready. People in the comments worried about the politics of this, just shut up. This is something far more important than politics.
Basketball.
Kentucky basketball is at stake.
Just shows you, again, on the market value side of things, no, it's not reached uncontrollable levels. The market will dictate, right? If players are priced above market value, they'll sit there and they won't go, like a house that is priced above market value, but they haven't found what that market value equilibrium is. The more money you've got to pay, the more you can pay players. It's the ones that don't have that access that are the ones that are complaining the most about it, and even some that do, that are complaining the most about it.
This is amazing. Then the conspiracy theorists chime in about somebody at JMI being married to somebody that's on staff at Kentucky. It stinks to high heaven, is Gale Bell 4356 added here. This is amazing. And
I love Beshear calling out the former athletic director Mitch Barnhart. So basically, that was a legitimate knock on him. He said, "My concerns include the creation of a new $1 million job that has no defined duties." So Mitch Barnhart is out as AD at Kentucky, very old school guy, and basically he's getting paid $1 million to be Mitch Barnhart. He told Kentucky Sports Radio, quote, "The notion that this golden parachute is falling from the ceiling, I'm going to sit in a rocking chair and eat hay is ridiculous garbage. And that notion that started by some 2 or 3 knuckleheads needs to end," end quote. Now being perpetuated by the governor of Kentucky.
So who is Mitch Barnhart?
He's the former athlete. He's the outgoing AD.
Former AD, right?
Long time Kentucky AD.
Got it. Okay. And he's on his way out?
Yeah, very old school, very anti-NIL for a while.
Okay.
As somebody that spent some time working for an NIL startup in Lexington, Kentucky, I can tell you pretty confidently that Mitch Barnhart at the start was very anti-NIL. He was a trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube kind of as administrator.
Yeah, as he's making $1 million
to
plus.
Golden parachute his way and sit in a rocking chair and eat hay.
Getting 10 tickets to all games, called people knuckleheads. The governor.
Included the governor. That's amazing. You think the stakes are not high in college sports right now? And in terms of the portal, we gotta give some love here to Arizona State, who, maybe made the best hire this offseason, James.
It's looking pretty good for the Sun Devils. I will say that.
Randy Bennett in, and now they've added one of the top transfer portal additions as well.
I think all 3 guys have done a really good job of building their rosters. Cincinnati has a strong recruiting class.
Okay, let's apples to apples
State
here.
Just added a transfer from Miami who averaged about 4.5 points per game.
Nigel Peck?
Prospect. No big international, Slovenian guy. K-State's going to be fine. I'm not worried at all. I actually really like this team they're putting together. It's going to take a couple years. But what Arizona State is doing, they've added the top 2 players from St. Mary's is coming with Randy Bennett.
Right.
And then they added a high-level transfer from Gonzaga just in the last week.
So Casey Alexander was not able to add the best player from Belmont to hit the portal? But Randy
because
Bennett.
Duke offered him $4 million.
But I don't know how much was K-State's roster last year. They could afford $4 million. But Arizona State, who also isn't have flush with tons of NIL cash, especially for basketball, added the number 1 player from St. Mary's. I'm just comparing.
Casey Alexander
Did not add the best player from Belmont. Randy Bennett did add the best player from St. Mary's.
Okay. You're not wrong. Randy Bennett's putting together a phenomenal roster.
I didn't have to do this.
Like, it looks really
I
good.
chose violence here.
You did. Currently top 7 in the Big 12. The thing with Casey Alexander, he is more of a TJ Otzelberger mold where their strength is getting the most out of their players and identifying talent. He was a transfer portal factory. He was a pipeline at Belmont. He recruited a bunch of under-recruited, like, 3-star guys. Built
Why aren't
them
you coming
into
after
stars.
me? Our overinflated,
Because I feel attacked.
overhyped Kansas basketball roster every year. You know that K-State's going to end up with more wins next year than Kansas. You're not even mentioning that.
Because I feel attacked. I feel personally attacked.
Well, attack back.
Kansas State's going to be fine next year. I do think it's going to be a transitional year. Like, it's really hard to win games in this league in your first year. I don't care who you are.
To your point, for a developmental coach.
Right.
Right.
And so next year's team, they're piecing together a roster. The other
Now, Otz did go to the Elite 8 Sweet 16 his first year.
as an 11 seed, they were a Cinderella story.
And they actually got some really good upsets along the way, too.
It is amazing. Like, it's amazing what he did that season that I think still to this day gets overlooked. He took over a team that went 2-22, the pre-NIL era, and he gets not just to the tournament, but to the Sweet 16?
You know what year that was?
2021, right?
22. You know who won the
22?
national championship that year?
Baylor?
That was 21.
Kansas. The other thing about Casey Alexander, it is very foreign because it's the polar opposite of what Jerome Tang did.
Yeah.
Jerome Tang went after all the highly touted, every publication on the planet has this guy as this rank and this star, and then they got to K-State and they weren't the same player. Casey Alexander's doing the polar opposite, where the hope is that these guys are a little bit better than their stars and all the services.
It's the substance over style
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I just thought it was kind of funny that, like, we talked yesterday about Casey Alexander not being able to add the best player from his Belmont roster, and then, like, a few hours later, Randy Bennett adds the best player from his former roster, the 4th overall player in the portal.
Who's ridiculously good. Like 17 points per game, stretch 4, can handle it. Arizona State, I think they'll be a tournament team.
You want to take a stab? I know how bad you are at pronouncing names, so I want you to take the first stab at it so we can all.
All right, where's my guy? Where's my guy? Paulius Morauskas.
Oh, I think that's pretty good.
Paulius Morauskas.
That's pretty good.
6'8" senior, high-level scorer, 94 out of 100 rating in terms of the scoring charts. And then don't forget about the center, Nate Garcia. That one just rolls right off the tongue. And Emmanuel, the shooting guard from Gonzaga, Emmanuel.
Innocenti?
Okay. Is that it?
Manu Innocenti. I mean, I don't think it's Innocenti if he's Italian.
Who said he's Italian?
Is he Italian?
I don't know. They'll have some names. That'll be an all-name team.
He is Italian.
Okay.
You made me double think that, but I was like, no way with a name like that he's not from Italy. Well, he's originally from the Ivory Coast, but he plays with the Italian national team.
But did he play at Gonzaga last year?
Yeah, he did. Sorry.
Yeah, he was really good. Good player. I mean, K-State's bringing in a bunch of guys that were like 8 or 9 point per game guys at their previous school. They definitely lack a star right now in terms of like that big home run splash portal ad. I'd probably say their number one guy is the transfer that they got from Colorado State. He was an all-league guy and averaged like 15 points a game, really good shooter. But that's kind of how Casey Alexander built Belmont. Like, they never had a guy that was like a 20-point-per-game guy at Belmont. They were balanced. They shared the basketball. So that's what K-State will look like this year.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. You've been wanting to talk about robots all week, so I'm going to give you a minute and a half to talk about robots.
Oh, dude. The robots are here.
Yeah.
Like,
I knew that.
Here. They're in people's homes. Figure AI is an American robotics company.
Oh, you're talking about humanoid robots.
Humanoid robots.
Got it.
No, not just like AI robots. I'm talking fully functional humanoid robots.
Why do we need humanoid robots?
So that's a great question. And
because the answer is we don't. Like I feel like there's this misconception that we need to have humanoid robots. We don't. They could look like anything.
So
we just have this obsession with building ourselves in a robot form.
Right. And these robots they're insane, number one. But the founder of the company, and they're the lead humanoid robotics company in the world. Essentially, the thought process for him is, I don't want to have to take time out of my day to fold laundry and do the dishes and order food and all these other little things so that he can get more work done. What's going to happen is it's just going to make America and the world even lazier, because people won't fill that time getting more productive things done. They'll fill that time just on the couch watching the robot.
100%. Well, and when we talk about the importance of silence, I have found I used to.
And this thing is loud. There won't be silence. There will be.
It's funny. We talked about the silence piece, and the other day I was folding laundry in silence and was like, there's something about this that I don't know, you need it. It takes time to do it, and there's other things I could be doing instead of folding laundry, but just folding laundry in silence and not having to listen to anything, just be with your thoughts. Man, what a concept.
Oh, it's very therapeutic.
It's this new thing. It's called silence. It's this trend taking the world by storm. Apparently, you just sit there and do nothing in silence.
A little bit of silence is actually very good for your brain, as is just getting outside.
Shocking.
I sat outside on the back of deck for 30 minutes last night.
It's this new thing. It's this new
felt
trend. It's called sitting outside.
I felt like a completely different person.
It's this new trend. It's called sitting outside doing nothing.
I came back inside. I was like, I've never been happier.
How about that?
That was fantastic.
All of
take
human
my
history
phone out there, just sat.
Thousands of years of human history of being outside, hunter-gatherers. All of a sudden, we're inside, lots of noise. Go figure, it would make us feel good to be outside with silence. What a concept.
That's it.
All right, enjoy the silence. That's James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. A big thank you to Anthony Smith, our producer with Big 12 Studios. A hearty thank you to Will Connerly, filling in today for T-Chains on the Tune In side. I'm Ari Tepkin. We're back tomorrow, presented by Modelo, on the day of the draft. But for now, we're out. Peace.